That's a good shift. Like
Good evening and welcome to the February 28th, 2022 regular meeting for the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education. Ms. Gerhart, please call the roll.
Mr. McClellan.
here.
Mr. Darrow.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Vice President Newmoff.
Here.
President Kalinowski.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members have had the opportunity to review the minutes of our January 10th organizational meeting, our January 10th regular meeting, as well as our regular meeting on January 24th. If there are no corrections to those minutes, may I have a motion and a second to approve those board meeting minutes? Mr. Darrow, Mr. Bush, Ms. Gerhart, please call the roll.
Mr. Darrow.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. McClellan.
Yes.
Vice President Newmoff.
Yes.
President Kalinowski.
Yes, and the motion passes. Superintendent Sawyers, are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, we have two corrections on the agenda, both under personnel. The first is item number 4. The person's name, Juanita Pennell, should be Zena Pennell. For name corrections, to her legal name. And the second is for Mr. Terry Fries being appointed as the high school head custodian. His step should be 15, not 14.
With those corrections, may I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Newmoff and Mr. Darrow. Ms. Gerhart, please call the roll.
Mr. Newmoff.
Yes.
Mr. Darrow.
Yes.
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. McClellan.
Yes.
President Kalinowski.
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on our agenda for this evening is public participation, and we do have a few people signed up for this evening, starting with Lee Brechter. And Lee, if you could state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. My name is Lee Brechter. I live at 7709 Roxton Court. I would first like to thank the board for having me speak at tonight's meeting. And I would like to address some comments that were made at a previous board meeting and be a representative tonight for the school organization Saga, of which I am a member of. I am a member of the New Albany Middle School Club Saga. I would first like to talk about my own identity and how Saga has helped me personally. I identify as gender fond and lesbian. I cannot give you the exact definition of gender fond right now because it is rather lengthy. So if you are really interested, I would refer you to Google for that one. But I knew I was not straight since about 5th grade. I am out to both of my parents. My mother is quite accepting. My father attempts to be. However, I do have to deal with some comments that I will always be female and I will always be what it says on my birth certificate. But through Saga, I have helped realize that that is simply not true and not how that works. I have realized through Saga that it's okay to identify as however you wish. And there are plenty of people willing and ready to support you when you need it. Now, I feel pretty comfortable with my identity. However, not everybody in this school does. And that is why we need to keep Saga and why Saga is such a vital and important part of the school. And we should also continue to teach other ways of life and other identities in school, because that is how children learn and understand and recognize there is more than one way to lead their life than what their parents think that they should lead. And also, I would like to say to parents, you are responsible for your kids in the way that you should allow them to make mistakes and hold them after they do, so they learn to never make those mistakes again. And if they make a mistake in their identity, that is okay, because now they know who they are and they understand themselves better. And just to wrap this up, I would like to state that everything that I've been through and everything that my peers have been through is unique and different in every way. And the people of my community have each had a unique and different experience, but they all, in their unique and different ways, need Saga as a supportive group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Jupiter Talbot. Again, please state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the board.
Hello, I am Jupiter Talbot. Funny name, I guess. I live at 7510 King George Drive. I am a student at New Albany Middle School and a member and currently, I guess, representative of the Sexuality and Gender Alliance, or SAGA. I am here today to both lightly rebut some comments that were made about our organization and about trans people in general at previous board meetings, and to advocate in general for the existence and continued well-being of SAGA. I myself am non-binary, meaning that I am neither a boy nor a girl, and I have been out as non-binary and not straight as well for about a year now. Over this year, I have experienced bullying, I've experienced verbal harassment, I have experienced physical harassment, simply due to the way that I identify and the pronouns that I prefer to use. Just the other day, as I was walking down the hallway from an assembly for Black History Month, I was called the F slur. Something was thrown at me. It's become an occurrence that just sort of happens. I have long felt when I first came out, I should say, I felt unaccepted in my community and at home. But my parents, who are here today, have grown more and more supportive and have been lovely, lovely people throughout the entire ordeal, and I know it has been hard for them. I'd like to use my father as an example. My father initially had trouble with using my correct name and pronouns sometimes, which is totally understandable. But as he joined a sort of inclusivity committee at his work and learned more about, and through this inclusivity committee, learned more about non-binary people and by proxy about me. And this helped him, from what I can see, accept me more, and is something overall that I really appreciate. This kind of education is something that Saga has the power to provide to the people of New Albany and the children of our schools in order to make our schools more safe and more comfortable environments for our LGBTQ+ students. Saga is also a safe space for LGBTQ+ students, as my associate lead rector has mentioned. It allows us to feel safe and understood, even if the rest of the school,
1 minute remaining.
thank you, even if the rest of the school is harsh to us. Overall, Saga has been incredibly helpful to me, and I know, because I have spoken to other students, I know that it has been incredibly beneficial to other students throughout many years of its existence. Saga is incredibly important to the students of our middle school, and it is incredibly important to the environment of our middle school. And I suppose that I'm just here to ensure that this has been said and ensure that this is known, as in the past it has been questioned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Alexandra Fox. Alexandra, please state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the board.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra Fox. I'm the founder and board president of Pride New Albany at 102 West Main Street, number 102 in New Albany. President Kalinowski, Vice President Newmoff, members of the board, and Superintendent Sawyers. On behalf of the board of directors of Pride New Albany, we stand with and support our LGBTQ+ students and their families, as well as students and families who identify as allies, and we'll continue to serve as a resource for them. We recognize how difficult it is for students, let alone adults, to stand up here and speak, and we applaud and admire their courage. As long as this meeting includes statements that speak out against New Albany students who identify as LGBTQ+, Pride New Albany will be here to remind students, families, and allies that we love them and we support them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda are communications to the board. Superintendent Sawyers.
President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, I have a few updates for you this evening. I'm going to start with SAT because we talked about this today. So this Wednesday, March 2nd, all juniors in our school district are participating in the SAT first thing in the morning. We kindly remind students and their families to please sleep well the night before, arrive to school rested after having a very nice breakfast, and then you hopefully will test very well. But the SAT for all juniors, it is the state provided test, it's free of charge, is this Wednesday, March 2nd. Health and safety protocols. I announced at the last Board of Education meeting that I wasn't doing a PowerPoint presentation or a Google Slides. There's a few updates I just want to talk about based upon ongoing conversations amongst the leadership team since our last Board of Education meeting. I'm going to start first with the announcement that went out Saturday morning to families. The CDC announced last Friday that it's a district now decision to discontinue the use of mandatory masking in all forms of school transportation based upon the changes of what's happening across the United States and related to COVID-19, the Omicron variant, or any other variant that has existed. So on Saturday, we did email all of our families that effective this morning on all forms of school transportation. Masking by students and staff is now voluntary, just like it is throughout the student day. So we've asked families to please inform their child or children of their preference, and if they elect a mask, to please make sure that they provide the mask to the student because we are getting out of the mask business until further notice. The last board meeting, I talked about the urgency for the return to normal throughout our school day. I've been working with the building principals, directors Emery and Hamilton and Mrs. Lofton to talk about what this happens to mean as we continue to operationalize things across the school district. Just want to review a couple of things that I talked about for the benefit of everyone at home, and then talk about where we're at on a couple other topics. So masking is now voluntary across the entire school campus because of the transportation change. So every family has the ability to make his or her own choice for their child or children and direct them accordingly. Social distancing, contact tracing is no longer required by the Ohio Department of Health or Franklin County Public Health. However, the requirement under state law, because COVID-19 is still labeled as a communicable disease, still has a notification requirement. So in the event there is potential exposure at school, we are still required to send the letter. We're receiving daily emails, phone calls, and requests to stop sending it. I cannot stop sending it by law. I've asked our attorney for the opinion to see if it's possible, and his answer was no. So we will continue to send the letter until further notice. Hand washing and hand sanitizing is just good hygiene practice. I talked about it at the last meeting. We do not have mandatory hand washing scheduled throughout the student day. We do ask kids, if for restroom purposes, obviously to wash their hands, and then before or after lunch to also wash their hands. But it's a it's a good hygiene practice. It is not now directly only related to COVID-19. Access to cleaning supplies continues throughout the school district. We are not doing group cleaning per se in the same way that was happening throughout the entire experience of COVID-19. Some high touch areas related to restrooms are still getting cleaned, but we were doing that prior to COVID just as a good hygiene practice through our building level custodial staff. We still clean cafeterias like we've always cleaned cafeterias. That really didn't change because of COVID. Beginning next week, we will fully restore volunteer opportunities as needed throughout the school campus. Volunteer opportunities throughout the school campus. Principals will start to communicate those opportunities as they arise at each building level. But as always, pursuant to Board of Education policy, you must have a valid background check on file or have a new background check completed to be eligible to volunteer in the school building. Visitors, our visitor policy serving as guest speakers, mystery readers, etc. will be welcome again beginning next week during the student instructional day. However, based upon the number of students currently electing mask wearing still during the student day and the ability that the only time that they can take them off is when they go to lunch, we are continuing the restriction for visitors accessing dominantly elementary lunch. We do have some parents that occasionally came in with Burger King, Wendy's, Subway, or some other outside food source to have lunch with their child. We're still affording parents that opportunity. The difference is you have to pick up your kid and take them out to lunch. That will continue most likely till at least spring break, and then we'll reassess where we're at the building levels to determine what else we would specifically do for lunch. The middle school, high school cafeterias, the QR codes have been removed from the cafeteria tables. Students are now permitted to sit anywhere as long as there are available seats at any respective location they choose. So if it is a table for 6 kids get to sit there. It's a table for 8 kids get to sit there. Table for 2 kids. We don't move furniture in the cafeterias. We have everything arranged just in case, hopefully never has to happen. But if we would have to do something turnkey to implement other solutions, we have to be prepared to do that. Elementary principals are evaluating assigned seats during the lunchtime as well as the recess zones for potential changes. They'll communicate those accordingly at the building level. And as spring approaches, warm weather will be upon us. Tomorrow's supposed to be 56. The cafeteria tables or picnic tables have been put back out from the winter season in different places on the school campus, hoping that as the sun continues to shine and kids want to go eat outside, they're welcome to do that just like they always have done. So of course, if circumstances change, we'll update you accordingly. But that's the work that the leadership team's done in the last 2 weeks. I think it'll be welcome news to many parents throughout our school campus that we continue to try to transition to make the student day as normal as possible for school as we possibly can. Are there any questions I can answer related to any of that information? It's exciting. It's a process, so just be patient. We're working on it. But we've been operationalized for almost 2 years, so we have to undo a lot. So thank you to the principals, Shirley Hamilton and Scott Emery as the directors for working through all those nuances over the course of the last 2 weeks. We'll update staff tomorrow based upon, we actually had a meeting just before we came to the board meeting that finished at 5:20 to kind of get ready to roll all this stuff out. So we're on our way.
Exciting.
Happy to see you.
Yeah.
We're trying every day. And the fact that the sun was out today was a beautiful thing.
The birds were chirping.
Made people happy.
Next on our agenda is a plea update.
Good evening, I'm Veronica Strieski, third grade teacher, and I have some staff highlights for February. 3 stellar New Albany High School band students challenged themselves and performed solos at the Ohio Music Educators Association District Solo and Ensemble Contest in February 12th. This was held at Reynoldsburg High School, and Mr. Falk's band students performed selections chosen from an approved list for judge and received ratings and comments from the educator. Mrs. Leichman, intermediate general music teacher, rehearsed with all these soloists, their accompanist, and played for them on the day of the contest. 2 of the soloists earned the highest possible scores. Lori Cheney, a 12th grade intervention specialist and senior team leader, was invited to be the inaugural speaker on February 25th at Muskegon University's Spotlight on Outstanding Intervention Specialists for the nature and needs of students with disabilities. She presented about the benefits of collaborative classrooms and inclusive practices for students with disabilities, students without disabilities, and content area teachers. Laura's been busy. She also attended a fast-paced training tour through EF Tours in Lisbon, Portugal, the weekend of February 17th to the 21st. During the training, she experienced a sampling of what EF Tours includes and heard from experienced tour leaders to help run a successful tour for students. Laura will also be leading a trip to Ireland this summer for students through EF Tours. This year, 12 students from Honors 2D Art, Drawing 1KC, AP Drawing, and Honor Ceramics had their work juried into the prestigious Scholastic Art Competition. In total, they received 12 honorable mentions, 11 Silver Key Awards, and 4 Gold Key Awards. The Scholastic Awards, founded in 1923, are the nation's longest running and most prestigious recognition program for creative teams. Gold Keys are awarded to the top 5 to 7% of all entries. Silver Keys are awarded to the top 7 to 10%, and honorable mention is awarded to the top 10 to 15%. This is an amazing achievement. Please congratulate the students. And lastly, Chrissy Pratt, a teacher on special assignment to the Teaching and Learning Collaborative from New Albany Plain Local Schools, has been selected as an Ohio awardee for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Pratt submitted her application in 2020 while teaching 3rd grade in New Albany local schools. Ms. Pratt, who is now one of 2 Ohio teachers who have received the award, the nation's highest honor for U.S. K-12 science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science teachers. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on our agenda is an update on the work we're doing to build a more inclusive campus culture.
So President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, I'm going to invite Mr. Hood, Director of Student Services, Safety and Security, to the podium first, and then he'll introduce Pat Samanich and Diane Herman as well. Just want to connect a couple dots before John starts talking. So back in September, you adopted the continuous improvement plan for the 2021-22 school year. In it, it included specific action by the school district to work towards building an inclusive campus culture as part of our culture goal in the school district. Since then, despite COVID and everything that COVID provided to us on a daily basis, we've tried to work behind the scenes with our Building Inclusive Campus Culture facilitators, the teacher facilitators, the grant that you're going to hear about later from Mrs. Lofton as the Assistant Superintendent from the Ohio Department of Education, specifically in the world of HR, to talk about specific goals, rationale for the goals, the measures that we've been put in place from an accountability perspective, and then action steps really localized to this current school year and the next school year to talk about the work in the school district that we believe is necessary that resulted in a framework. So the Building Inclusive Campus Culture teacher facilitators, Pat Samanich, the Dean of Students, building principals, and all the other members of the administrative team have worked on this over the course of really the last 3+ months. But I'm going to give yeoman's credit to John, Diane, and Pat that you're going to hear from tonight, and Dr. Hamilton, who participated in putting together this document that'll become available on our district website tomorrow. So we'll send out a special communication to staff members that John and I are working on so that we can introduce it, but then it'll become available to our families as a roadmap for some specific goals and action steps that we believe are necessary in the school district to better support the academic and developmental needs of our kids within an inclusive campus culture. So John's going to define that for you tonight with Diane and Pat. John.
Thank you, President Kalinowski, Vice President Newmoff, board members. I'm pleased tonight to be able to come and share an update on the work that we've been doing with building an inclusive campus culture. You may hear it referred to tonight as BIC work, as just a way to shorten that maybe a little bit. But it's also a pleasure to be here tonight with Mr. Pat Samanich, who's our K-12, pre-K-12 Dean of Students, and Diane Herman, who's our Wellbeing Initiative Community Liaison. They both have been instrumental in this work that we're going to be sharing tonight. We always like to sort of ground this conversation in our purpose statement, which is just this reminder to our community that we are in this constant pursuit of excellence in both academics and in developmental needs. So if you think about your own children, or if you think about the students that are here sharing tonight, we've got this unwavering commitment that we want them to be smoking hot academically. We want them to be so solid, not just in core subject matters, but we want them to be strong in communication. We want them to be strong problem solvers. We want them to be good critical thinkers. This is just this unwavering commitment that's our pursuit as a school district. But it's so nice to be able to balance that now with the same level of commitment towards their developmental needs. And the fact that we want them to be healthy physically and mentally, knowing that when we're at that point, that's when we really can fully engage in learning, when we feel like we're just grounded in wellness. And so this is a big part. This purpose statement that we start with tonight is a big part of our belief system and where we want to go. And when we start thinking about that, and you're welcome to move to the next slide, it's the way we've sort of described it is that we want to build a culture where we feel, or where students feel, they're safe and supported and connected. I want to compliment the students that came up tonight and share with you, because that's, you may not remember that from when you were that age, but that's a really difficult thing to do, to stand up in front of adults and share openly like that, genuinely like that. And our desire is we want all students to have this deep sense of belonging. And the testimony tonight tells you there's work to do still there. All students have this deep sense of belonging where they feel safe, connected, and supported in their classroom environments. That's really the catalyst for our work in building an inclusive campus culture. Our main goal tonight is to share a framework that we've built that has sort of some goals set for us and sort of some guiding document that will sort of lead us through this work. That's our main objective tonight. But while we were spending that 3 months that Mr. Sawyers was talking about, there was lots of great things going on kind of behind the scenes that I think sometimes don't get the attention that they need. Lots of great action steps going on in buildings, conversations. And so I want to start the night just by inviting Pat Samanich to come and to just give you a little bit of a background. And you're welcome to go on to the next slide. I searched the internet for a good picture of Pat. And this is the best picture I could find that sort of shows his passion and what he's doing. And Pat, I have no idea who you're talking to in that picture, but it shows your level of commitment to your work.
Trees, isn't that us at recess? I think that's kind of the primary, having a bit of fun. So, thank you, Mr. Hood. We've got to find a better picture. Okay, a couple things. One, I'm going to try and stay right here at the podium. All right, I'll do my best. Dr. Hamilton just nudged me back, give me a little if I start to wander a little bit. And two, I'm told I got to be quick, but I do have to share just a quick, if you go back one slide for me, just one quick statement of story. That kind of is my fun and the passion I have for kids, to be honest with you. That's obviously when I was a head football coach here and spent 20 plus years and loving the game, but it was the kids that made it special. And so I took this energy under Principal Kramer at the high school to try and be the dean of students and was able to have a fun 3 years there. And then now being able to be in every single building. Imagine my first day when that guy walks into the ELC on Monday, Miss Lovero's building, and there's a little guy, he was having a rough go, didn't really want to get going right away. And so here he comes, this guy's ready to come get him, I'm going to save the day. And our school psychologist happened to be working with him and turned to me and said, I got it. I was like, okay, they don't need me right now. Well, the school psychologist is my wife. So she's like, I don't need that guy right now. I had to learn how to walk the halls with this, right? Yes, I have to be more quiet when I'm in there. But now we can turn the slide. But that was just my first experience in the ELC. It's quite on a Monday in the ELC and on a Friday back at the high school, Mr. Kramer. It's quite the game. But again, to our students that came tonight, kudos. It's hard to stand up here. I've been doing this, speak in front of people for 30 years, and this is difficult. So we're proud of you for having that courage. But I love this slide and everything that we talk about and everything that we do, and it kind of drives how my interaction with our kids are, my interaction with our teachers are. And it's simple. It's leaders create a culture that drives behavior that produces the results you're looking for. And if we go back just 1 second, the results we're looking for, back 2 slides, you don't have to do it. Ms. Hoffman, don't want to, but we want our students to feel safe, supportive, and connected. Period. I'm a former football coach, and they're very, very smart guys and ladies, and I like to keep things simple: safe, supportive, connected. So everything we're doing, every intentional interaction that I try and have with our students and our staff falls under this umbrella. That was the goal. That was the vision that was championed, and that's where we needed to go. So with those results in mind, the goal was, okay, let's back it up a little bit. What are the behaviors that we want to have with each other when it comes to culture? Because culture is simply how we interact with one another. And once you interact with our students and our colleagues and our neighbors, we find out we have so much more in common than we do different. Think about that. So much more in common. Every parent wakes up and wants nothing but the best for their child, to go to a school and they get on the bus to be safe, supportive, and connected. And return off that bus, running with the lunchbox, having a great big smile. Every single parent wants that. As they get to middle school, brings up a whole new challenge that then in high school is moving on into post-grad work. But every single day, I want my middle schooler to get home and tell me that she had a great day and she felt safe, supported, and connected. So that's what we're doing. That's the work. And the work is our culture playbook a little bit more. If we turn the page a little bit here, again, that strives with our 20 square feet. I refer back to the R factor. The R factor, Superintendent Sawyers brought that to our staff in 2018 and really was the mandate of how we are going to interact with one another as a staff, and we wanted to teach our students that. The R factor is all about how we respond. All about how we respond in tough situations every single day. Down at the elementary and the primaries. I've been working with, they do a tremendous job. Principal Smith, Principal Rivera do a tremendous job with using literature for their kids to really spread through the R factor lessons. And it's amazing. So we do book read alouds and have conversations based around that. But if you look, our 20 square feet is what I really want all of us to focus on tonight. Students, board members, teachers, principals, whoever's listening online, our 20 square feet, that's what we control. That's what we control every moment of the waking day. That's what we control when we get up, when we come into work, we come into school, when we walk into a classroom, when students sit down, they own their 20 square feet and we own ours. And the goal is to understand and stop and have an intentional appreciation of that, because my 20 square feet impact those around me. And in our case, if you work for a school district, my 20 square feet, it impacts directly my classroom culture, how I behave in my classroom, how I interact with my students, how I interact in the hallways, how I interact in a locker room, whatever it may be. And because of that, the positive impact that we're trying to have on one another, being intentional about it, will flow out. And that's the goal. And that's a conversation I have daily with students. Because every single day we have those events that pop up that we are required to try and just have an above the line response that's disciplined, but really ultimately starts with kindness and respect. That's been the message. That's been the message. And so to understand that if we can continue to do that on a daily basis, the impact by the end of the school year will be felt. And for our students sitting in the middle school right now, you'll really see it by the time you graduate from high school. So that's where it all comes from. And that's what we do. We go down to our BBOs at the bottom. All right, these came prior to the R factor. This is what we're all about. Well, I love this document because it was created by all staff members. Everyone had input. What do we really want the values to be for the New Albany Plain Local School District, from the ELC all the way through the high school? And it's a great trigger for me. When I walk in, I see it up on the e-lobby banner. And our values: rise up and own it, stronger together, and better every day. Right? That's a trigger for me. Okay, no matter what's happening, no matter what noise I have going on, I owe it to our students and my colleagues to rise up and own it, be stronger together, and be better every day. We're going to fall. We're going to stumble. We're going to stub our toe. It's going to happen. But how are you going to respond? How am I going to respond in the classroom? How am I going to respond when I get home after having a bad day? How am I going to respond as a teacher, first period where I couldn't find my car keys, I'm running late, I'm flying into the parking lot, and I'm running up to class because I have 25 students looking at me that need my best. And so it's real. And I love it because my colleagues and I helped draft it. And if you look at the outcomes under Stronger Together, this was crafted, I believe, Mr. Sawyer's 2014, 2015?
2015, 16.
The outcome, if you can see it, for Stronger Together: safe, supported, connected. Things don't change. It just really needs to be intentional. And that's what this work is all about. Being intentional about my 20 square feet every single day, how I interact with students and colleagues alike. If you can flip the slide for me, please. So the last school year has been sometimes running on a treadmill, feel like you're not going anywhere because it's just, there's so much, right? There's so much to this work. And again, thank you to Mr. Hood, to Diane, for all the work that they've done to put into it. Mr. Lemberg's here tonight from the high school, all his work that he contributed. Thank you, Elliot. Principals, or Superintendent Sawyers, Principal Kramer, all the principals. But it truly, it's a lot. And trying to bring it down and simplify is really kind of the goal, because we want it to be meaningful. We want it to be intentional. And so the first groups I really wanted to meet with were students. Let's hear the student voice. What does it look like now walking through New Albany High School in comparison to 2006 when I first got here? Things have changed, right? And so the question we ask is, what does it truly mean to belong? And we just listened and we just took notes. And just let the students talk. Second thing we asked, what does it look like to belong? What are the attributes, characteristics, behaviors? If I'm walking in the halls or if I'm looking in the lunchroom, that I can see that this is an inviting, safe, welcoming environment. And finally, what are some actionable steps that we can do to improve? Because that ultimately is what we're trying to do. Better every day, right? If we're going to truly want to be better every day, for me, I like to have an A, B, and C, or a 1, 2, or 3. And so what are those action steps? And we listened and took notes and got that student voice. Some of the student groups, if you turn the slide, please. Some of the student groups that I was able to speak with, our high school student services team is our counselors, school psychs, so that's an adult group. But I met with our high school NAACP student group, multiple occasions, our high school BSA group, high school BC2M group, Bring Change to Mind. The high school BSA is the Black Student Association. I met with groups of a diverse group of athletes. I met with our Leap and Rise, our special ed students that had a tremendous discussion. And just really just got so much powerful feedback from that group of students. And Mr. Hood even reached out and spoke to a New Albany Boy Scout group. So we really tried to be intentional about really just getting a huge sample, a diverse sample of student voice. If you go ahead and click, you can kind of see, this is kind of the dump. This is a screenshot. We have a huge spreadsheet that's running that is all of our notes compiled into what does it mean to belong, what are those attributes, and what are the action steps from the students. And then, those are the things that we're pouring through and really tried to give intentional, meaning to try and place into this plan. These are things that are also that we can look at when it's going to be particular to each individual building. That is going to be different. It's going to look different at the high school than it does at the ELC. But a couple common themes. These were from the high school. Common themes from across those groups. What does it mean to belong? The common theme was to be accepted, to fit in. That was common. Those were kind of the first words that came out. What did that look like? And the one that got me that I was really impressed with was confidence. That came up over and over and over again. Our students perceive students walking and interacting with confidence as that feel of, they can kind of see that belonging there. And kindness was the second. Kindness. Got a lot going on. We have a lot going on. But if we can see kindness and confidence in our kids walking, I think that'd be pretty cool. Action step. Be proactive. And I think that was loud and clear. Be proactive instead of reactive, what we're trying to do. Again, this is a work in process. This is trying to just be better every day. Understanding we're going to have great days. Understanding there's going to be days where you shake your head and say, well, it didn't go as planned. But that's what tomorrow's for. If you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. A couple things have been happening to you just behind the scenes. We had so much data that we were brainstorming and researching that we made a splash page out on a Google Drive. And it's really, these are about 42, 43 links of research, resources that are ready to use for our staff, and tasks that have already been completed that we have implemented into the buildings that you're seeing. And a lot of the work, most of the work has already been in place and happening. We have amazing staff members and amazing administrators at each building. Then, but this is just ongoing, and now it's just kind of bringing it into that lane for all of our students to be safe, connected, right? Have that sense of belonging. And that's what we're looking to do. So I hope I didn't go too long, but I just have a couple more really quick. Just wanted to give a couple highlights from a couple of the buildings really fast from our big facilitators from the ELC. Their staff has created a library created for staff to highlight various topics and cultures. They've invited parents to send in representations of their culture or cultural celebrations that include live stream read alouds, games, crafts, traditional clothing. Over in the primary, and I tried to paint a wide picture, a broad picture of only 2 bullets each. There's 15 bullets each, but I wanted to kind of show a little bit of everything that's going on. In the primary, again, another diversified reading library, the emphasis on literature there. And this week they have a Stronger Together event. Stronger Together, BBOs, love it. a Stronger Together event where it's showcasing Olympic and Paralympic events that students will participate in wellness and have the awareness and celebration of individual differences and abilities in student athletes. So I thought that was really cool. Over in the intermediate, they created early on a trusted adult survey with pictures that students could identify. We want to have every student, when they get dropped off the school, off the bus or out of the car, that they can come in and they can see one trusted adult that gives them a fist bump, knows them by name right away when they're walking in. Start with one and then let's grow it from there. I have my person. And I thought that was a great way the intermediate could do it. They could see then if there was holes and gaps that they needed to fill and reach out, be intentional about it. They created displays and posters celebrating current Black Americans, opportunities for students to create and display about a person they're choosing is happening. In the middle school, planning and led professional development for teachers related to implicit bias in education. And also creating, I love this one from Ms. LeBeau, creating a big student committee to partner with teachers, student voice, right? Student voice. At the high school, spent the 2 professional development days that we had for the year. It really focused heavy on implicit bias training, and it actually culminated just this last 2 weeks ago through the high school staff taking an implicit bias test through Harvard University. It was called Project Implicit. It's our work, our follow-up work from Kenston Henderson. And then in NETS, being dedicated to have the NETS is 15 minutes per day tagged on with our 5th period teachers to build relationships and celebrate holidays and cultures. And it's intentional work. Again, that's 15 minutes added on with a teacher you currently have that's not doing calculus, that's just trying to build that relationship, have that trusted adult, check in on kids, check in on each other. I know I'm past my time. I did not move. Too bad from here. Thank you for your time. It's going to be a work in progress, but you know what? Stronger together, we got this.
Can I ask you a quick question? So the group you met with, do you know approximately how many students it was?
Top of my head, between 100 to 200, probably 150, yeah, just a safe bet.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have questions? Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Pat was so conscientious about staying put, he forgot to tell you to change slides. So if you want to, you can move to the slide that has Diane on it. We're going to go to Diane next, but big thank you to Pat. Just so that you guys are reminded, Pat's in a different building each afternoon. So he spends 1 day a week in each building helping with this work. A huge compliment to the principals and to the big facilitators that are in each building, because these almost 50 activities that he mentioned have been these ongoing things that have been happening every day while we've been working on this document that we're going to share tonight. So a huge compliment to our building leaders for the work that they've been doing around this. And then a super important part for me in this conversation that Pat just gave you was that performance pathway, because we want student voice in this. If we think about that pathway of what's the outcome that we want at the end of this, which is this deep sense of belonging, then I need to ask students, okay, what does that look like? For you to feel like you truly belong, what does it look like? What are the characteristics that would be of a student who feels fully belonging, fully connected? And then that leads me back then to the culture that I'm responsible for. So it might be in my office space. It might be in my classroom as a teacher. It might be in my leadership as a building principal. But now I'm responsible now for taking this culture and forming it in a way that's going to get me these behaviors that will tell me that a student belongs. So that's an important part of what the work that we're doing here is that performance pathway. And it's an R factor piece. So it's just letting you know all this work that we've done in the past, all this framework that we've built in the past around R factor is forming who we are and forming how we do business. So we did spend a lot of time talking about a framework that we could use as a guiding document. Diane's been a critical person in the formation of that. So I want to invite Diane today. Just a reminder, Diane is our Wellbeing Initiative Community Liaison. And Diane, I'll invite you now to sort of share with them that structure and the work of that framework.
Thank you. As Superintendent Sawyers has stated, as Pat has stated, as John has stated, we put together this framework and action plan to assist in building an inclusive campus culture, and we've looked back at the work we have been doing throughout the past, if we go back to 2016, the past 6 years or so, looking at the R factor, our values, behaviors and outcome statements, our culture playbook, and our continuous improvement plan, as well as the needs of our learning community. We consulted with Dr. Sierra Austin, the Regional School Improvement Coordinator for Diversity and Equity at the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio, and she had an opportunity to review this document and make some suggestions as well. We crafted a statement of commitment to this work and a vision statement. And as we've shared in the past, this important work to create a deep sense of belonging for our students is a marathon, not a sprint. We've created goals with timelines and measures of achievements over the next 5 years. So a few things to look at in the next year or two, and then some goals for further out. Our vision states, we will develop a culture of belonging that builds trusting relationships with all students and their families, encourages and supports cultural awareness, knowledge, and skills, and creates opportunities for connectedness that lead to inspirational learning experiences that encourage and motivate all students and staff to achieve their best academic and developmental outcomes. We've established 5 goals in here. Each will have their own measure of success and action steps. Some of this work has already been established and is ongoing. Our first goal, and you can switch to the next slide, is that each student will have a strong sense of belonging at our school. Really our most important thing, well, number 1, research shows that when children have strong relationships with caring adults, they are more likely to be engaged at school and more motivated to succeed academically. This is embedded in benchmark 5 of our continuous improvement plan. We have several action steps in these goals. Goal 1, we'll continue to conduct age-appropriate needs assessment surveys of students to determine the level of student belonging or the lack thereof felt by students. And the results obtained will inform specific action steps for improvement for each successive school year. We'll build relationships through research-based instructional practices, including NEST, as Pat has mentioned, mentoring, student clubs, and other peer-to-peer programs to create an environment of trust between students and staff, as well as between students and their peers. We'll continue to expand professional development opportunities, including face-to-face training, create inclusive spaces that support networking, foster professional growth, and inspire innovative ideas among all staff members. Continue to implement CASEL-aligned lessons to achieve Ohio Department of Education SEL standards. Cultivate a culture of accountability to support building an inclusive campus culture through our R Factor programming. We can switch to our next slide. Our second goal is to recruit and hire new certified licensed teachers, administrators, classified staff from diverse backgrounds while maintaining strong retention rates. Our action steps are to participate in, and we have started this, diverse teacher hiring online modules that have been developed by Otterbein University. These focus on training and education of our interview teams about the importance of hiring diverse staff and the impact their own biases, implicit or explicit, may have on a candidate's chances of being selected. We have begun an Educators Rising chapter at New Albany High School this year. This group of students interested in pursuing a career in teaching and work with Otterbein liaisons and chapter advisors from surrounding districts to develop activities, curriculum, and field experiences on our campus that help students prepare for their future profession and understand the skills and dispositions required in this field. Our non-teaching employee tuition reimbursement program will provide more equitable opportunities for high-quality employees to move into professional occupations such as teachers, related service providers, and administrators. Reviewing job responsibilities to ensure inclusion-related expectations are outlined for prospective employees of the district. And to maintain strong retention rates, continuing to provide high-quality trained mentors for teachers new to the district, and conduct exit surveys upon notice of resignations to monitor and respond when possible to the reasons staff are leaving Albany Plain Local School. You can switch to our next slide. Our third goal is to increase cultural awareness of all students, teachers, administrators, and staff High-quality professional learning can cultivate teacher and staff strengths and help to address the needs of each student they serve and create a more just, inclusive, and equitable environment where we appreciate the unique contributions of each student and colleague. For our action steps, we will create a clear, positive, and uplifting messaging campaign to increase empathy and belonging, kindness, as Pat has shared. We will recognize cultural dates, providing a list to all school administrators and staff about the various cultural and commemorative dates to incorporate into age-appropriate curricular opportunities. Continue to search for and remove barriers for student groups, particularly students of diverse backgrounds, to ensure they have access to the most rigorous courses available and equitable access to learning. Utilize instructional materials aligned to Ohio's learning standards, utilizing student assessment data to provide the intervention or enrichment necessary to support every student to succeed academically, and continuing to utilize research-based instructional techniques to engage 100% of our learners. You can switch the slide. Our fourth goal is to increase student engagement and learning opportunities, to emphasize the value and importance of diverse student participation in all curricular and extracurricular activities. Research supports that students who engage in these activities are more likely to display a positive attitude about school, increase academic achievement, and strengthen school pride. Our action steps to provide a variety of opportunities to develop culturally aware student leaders that are visible to the entire student body and reflect the diverse backgrounds present in each school building. Evaluate and refine the current process used for screening students for advanced level classes. To inform action steps, collect information from our schools, which provide examples of student engagement and opportunities for historically underrepresented students, individuals with special needs or disabilities, our learners of English language, and students living in low-income spaces. And increase age-appropriate opportunities for students to discuss college and career plans with school and outside resource professionals. Our next slide. Our fifth goal is to increase community and parental engagement. Research demonstrates that strong relationships between schools, families, and community members can positively affect student achievement and outcomes. And there's quite a bunch of action steps here. They're all really interconnected. Increasing having honest conversations, communication across all of our usual platforms, share information about school and community resources to assist families who are new to our district, provide opportunities for the community and parents to assist with internships, mentoring, community service hours, or charitable collections and involvement, engaging students, faculty, staff, administrators in the community in educational opportunities and celebrations which highlight the diversity of our learning community. Community outreach with all of the groups in and around New Albany to foster and continuously build a strong sense of belonging for students and their voices beyond our learning campus, and hosting community forums throughout the school year to engage in open dialogue or to learn with parents and community members on just-in-time topics that increase our ability to meet the academic and developmental needs of our students while building an inclusive campus culture. So now I'll invite John back to the podium to wrap this up.
Thank you, Diane. I think it's probably important before we actually go into the sort of the conclusion section of this, which would be the next slide. It's probably important for you to know that we looked at several different schools that were doing this work. We looked at some of the frameworks that they had. We, in a small team, we sort of talked about what are the things that we like, what are the things that we don't like. Then Diane and I met separately and sort of summarized that conversation. And then Diane pretty much worked her magic on putting together this framework that you're looking at right now. So she was really instrumental in building this. Another important part, I think, for you to know is that we have reached out to the ESC and have asked for an external consultant named Dr. Sierra Austin. I don't know if that name sounds familiar. She's worked with us in a couple other areas in the district and helps the ESC lead some diversity work. We made sure that she had the opportunity as a consultant to take a look at this document and give us feedback. She was highly complimentary of it. And that's not to sound pretentious in any way of our work, but it's just to let you know that these external validating what I would consider to be sort of expert eyes took a look at this document and we're very pleased with the direction that it's going, and it gave us some recommendations, some things to tweak it with. but we're highly complimentary of the work and fully behind our efforts in this way. So to sort of draw a conclusion then to this document and what this all means, we now have 5 goals that are guiding our work. So everything that we're doing now as buildings, as BIC representatives, can be tied now to these 5 goals that we've established based off the data that we've received from our surveys. We've recognized that this is a long-term commitment. We've labeled it as it's a marathon, not a short distance race. But what it's basically saying is we're committed to this work. We're in it for the long haul. We're committed to the next point, which is we want all students to have a deep sense of belonging where they feel like they're safe, supported, and connected in this learning environment. That's really the primary theme behind this work. We want to make sure that what we're doing, though, is credible. We want to be able to say that we've measured it. We want to be able to stand at the podium at a future date and say we're getting better at this, or this is an area where we've stumbled and we need to readjust. We want things to be measurable and accountable in our work in this way. Recognizing that when students are fully invested in, or when students are fully feel like they're in this sense of wellness, that's when they're fully invested in learning, and that's driving this piece as well. And then we think it's just really important for the community to know that it's completely connected to the work that we've done before, that came before us, particularly the R factor work that we've done. So this isn't like an isolated situation, but it's a continuation of the work that we've been doing already. So what are our next steps then? Where do we go from here? We've got the framework in place now. We've got the goals in place. We've shared it with building administration, the administrative team. Just before this meeting, we had a long discussion about that framework and how it can guide us. We've got facilitator now that's helping us within our buildings with Pat and this dean position. We've got BIC representatives in each building now that are going to be working with building principals to talk about now how can these goals be actually meaningful to us here and come up with actionable steps that make sense at those building levels. And then it's obviously going to be embedded in ongoing professional development where we can just continue to seek out experts to guide us in the work that we're doing. And then it's exceptionally important to us that we have the voices of others in this work. So we want to be hearing from parents. We want to be hearing from students. And so a big part of this goal construction is making sure that the community has a voice in this too, as far as where this goes and how we can best support. The next slide just basically confirms for you that it's not in isolation. We are one team, one family. We're High School Musical, all in this together, and excited about that partnership and excited about the work that lies ahead of us. We recognize it as a challenge. I'm not gonna candy coat this. When I look at this document and look at the measurements specifically, and we've done this sort of 10,000 foot view tonight, but when I look at the measurements and know that this falls into my workload, to some degree. These are robust, I guess is the best way to put it. We did not coast in terms of putting this together and bring you something that we think is going to be easily achievable. These are robust measurements that I have a desire to meet. I'm very goal driven. That's how I live my life, is just wanting to achieve. And I look at this as a really rewarding challenge for all of us to partner together in one family as we strive to make our community a sense of well-being for everyone, where they all feel a strong sense of belonging, safe, supported, and connected. So thanks again to Pat and Diane, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have tonight or help you with any information that might.
I'll start. I just would like to echo some of your comments. First, I want to thank all of you. I do feel like seeing this as a presentation, it's kind of a lot, but it also doesn't drill down into all the detail. And so I'd like to just share that, the board has seen many iterations of all the work that's gone into this and all the specific measures, and has a huge appreciation for the work that's been done, but also the aggressive targets you've set, and all of the input across the district to make this a collaborative effort, because I think that is how we will get this done together. So I just want to kind of share with everyone that while this is kind of 100,000-foot overview. There is a lot of detail behind this, and it will be shared on our website if people want to dig into the detail, but it is robust, and want to thank you all for all the work that's been put into it.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for the work. I echo a few things you said, that this, we need to be intentional. And I think when you put a framework together like this with specific measurable goals, it's to me the best we can do to be intentional by setting those goals and then actually executing on it. I think you also said it's a marathon, not a sprint. Somebody said that. And it's absolutely the case. I mean, Pat referenced 2006, 2007 since he's been here. And this is an evolution. This is an evolving, living, breathing school community that we want to do all we can to build this inclusive campus culture. But this document, appreciate all the inputs that you've gained from the various constituencies. I think you mentioned you've got building leaders named. Are the parents and the students aware of those building leaders? And you mentioned getting additional input. If there are other suggestions from the community, do you want that to come through you and Diane and Pat, or would you prefer that go to the building leaders?
That's a great question. Right now, if you look at the document that gets loaded tomorrow, it's going to have my name on it. But I'd say for a lot of the questions that maybe that can't come up, they're going to be building directed in terms of the type of question it is. That's going to end up going back to a building for answers and support. In addition to that, our buildings have had parent committees, as an example, already in place. And they've sort of taken a back seat over the last 3 months while we were sort of forming this, but we've got parents already that are committee formed and have a leadership structure already together. Many of our buildings already have action steps in a long range kind of way, like 2 or 3 year goals on action steps. So much of this work's been going on behind the scenes while we were crafting this document specifically. So there's, to answer your question, there is leadership in place within the buildings, but I'm happy to field any questions from families that have a question and get them to the right spot.
And just to be very clear, we've communicated to families and to students who those building leaders are. If they would like to go on a building level with a suggestion or a comment.
We'll make sure that that's exceptionally clear. We'll make sure. I'm not sure that we've actually been intentional about that piece. The committee members obviously know, the piece of that committee work's been shared out, but I'll make sure that that's a point that we have even posted on the website as to where they can go with leadership.
Thank you. And again, I just would comment, again, this is a journey, and I appreciate all the effort to try to get it, lay out a plan and then execute on that plan. But we all know this is a community that is just a microcosm of the broader world community. And obviously with today's affairs going on, we know that this cannot be solved in every corner of every building and every room in this campus, but this board I know is very committed to working alongside you to make sure that we do everything we can intentionally to make sure those voices are heard. We bring forward plans and we execute so we can do our best, and that's where we're going. So thank you for the efforts.
Just John, Diane, Pat, thank you very much, and everyone else who's supporting the work. I mean, it's super critical. I agree with how you kind of kick things off. As a district, we've done an amazing job of really driving academic excellence, and it's very important, more important than ever, honestly, that we are focusing on the whole student, their whole well-being. This work is going to help get us there. I appreciate that there is a lot of additional detail, the measures, the KPIs. I think that's super important to make sure that we know what we're going after and we hold ourselves accountable. We won't get there. We won't hit everything the first time, right? Kind of just as what Paul was echoing and everyone said, it's a journey. It'll take time. But I love the start that we have, the collaborative effort. It's really important work. So thank you all. Thank you.
I guess we're going in order. I'll share the thanks. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the work, everybody. And that was tough for you to stand behind the podium for a while.
Like I'm much better on those.
I give you a lot of credit for that. I don't think anybody can disagree at all with the idea that we want all students to feel safe, supported, and connected, right? I mean, so I love the fact that that's where we're starting, that's the ultimate objective. When I listened to the 2 students who came and spoke tonight, we want all students to feel safe, supported, and connected. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up and talk in public, talk to a bunch of adults, talk to the school board, talk to the community because it's live streamed. I mean, that takes a lot of courage. And so I give a lot of credit to those students for coming and speaking tonight. And I want all students, we want all students to feel safe, supported, and connected. When I look at the document a little bit, look at this, this page. Will this be on the website?
Yes.
This stuff too? Because, you know, I want folks to know that there are more definitions than just the two that were on that page. And I want to make special note that, and give a lot of credit to you and everybody who's worked on this, because it's so easy, frankly, in the current environment to just do what everyone else is doing, right? To follow the herd, as it were. And I think you and your team and everybody who's worked on this has really done yeoman's work of making this something that is organically developed within our community, with the people that you've spoken with students, bringing all of the different voices in. Because again, it's easy to count immutable characteristics. It's easy to count the characteristics that are protected by law. And yet we're bringing in other elements of diversity to make sure that when we talk about diversity, it is in fact a very broad definition of diversity that includes not only immutable characteristics, but also viewpoints, as you clearly define here. And so I think that's terrific. I want to give you a lot of credit for that, because I think it's really important. I think it helps bring all members of the community together to align with safe, supported, and connected across the board. So I want to give credit for that. I think it's really, really important, and I appreciate it.
Well, I'm left with not much. So now I know how you used to feel.
You guys don't have to go in order.
You're in alphabetical order, just remember that.
I know. No, truly though, Jupiter, thank you for coming and speaking to us. Appreciate it. And it is a great thing to do. So, and no one should ever have to go through a school day recounting some of the stories you've told. So we got a long way to go. And I mean, obviously we've talked about all the KPIs and everything else. You know, there's all these benchmarks that we want to hit, goals we want to reach. And that's good, and we need that. And not to oversimplify this, but as you know, as Mr. Salmon said, so much of this is your 20 square feet and how you treat other people. And I know I've said it before, and I know it's cliche, but it's the old golden rule about treating others the way you want to be treated. And maybe that seems a little too simple in this day and age, but think about what that really means. I mean, the kids who did whatever they did to you, what if you were them? You know, let's take a few seconds and think about this, people. Thank you for this work. It's important. You know, you have the board support in continuing to do this work. And let's just be kind.
Can I respond to that just really quickly, not to extend the meeting any longer than it needs to go, but this is paramount to me, what John just said. And I shared an example today at the administrative retreat that we had right before we came to here. That's, I think, just a really powerful way to show how simple this work can be too. So Pat met with a group that we asked that question, what does it mean to belong? And then what does it look like? What are the characteristics you would have if you were belonging? One of the students said, if I was truly belonging, my teacher would know my name. So you know, that student's implying that he's got a teacher somewhere in his schedule that he doesn't feel knows his name. And he was saying, if I truly belong somewhere, they're going to know my name. That's an example for us where we got this paper now just filled with action steps from kids that say, here's things we could be doing. So we've got a brand new driver that just started. They were shadowing with someone, but they literally just started driving the first time today on their own. I was at the bus this afternoon, and a student who candidly has been a challenge for us at times in terms of busing is coming onto the bus. And this brand new bus driver, first day on her own, smiles and greets the student by name. And this student literally stopped in her tracks. I mean, before she stepped on the bus, she stopped in her tracks and looked at this driver and said, "Well, how did you know my name?" And this driver said, "Well, I've been purposefully learning everybody's names. I want to be in a relationship with you," is what this driver was basically saying. And this student actually smiled at this driver and walked on the bus and got back onto their seat with this whole, I mean, their whole posture even changed, literally. The hood up and bent over, their whole posture just changed when that happened. So that's a great example for me of what, John, what really you're just saying is it's really about just being kind and investing in others and being in relationship with others in a very genuine way. So I'm actually really excited about having Pat now take these action steps that came from students and go back and sit down with principals, sit down with building big representatives and say, okay, now from your building perspective, which of these are doable? Which of these things that we actually could put in place? Because I saw it today in a 30-second example of how it changed a kid's life in 30 seconds. So thank you for those thoughts and comments. So.
John, when will we hear from you again?
What was that answer? I'm sorry.
Most likely May. End of the year reports will be in May and June, so it just depends on who gets which one where. So somewhere May or June. We will post the Building an Inclusive Campus Culture framework to the website tomorrow with the PowerPoint presentation. It'll go out in the morning. We won't stay and do it tonight, but it'll go up tomorrow. And to John's point, and really it's members of all the board, it's a 10-page document, its current iteration that focuses on really goals, measurable outcomes with specific action steps just for this year and next, with a couple forecasting items by 2027 as far as the measurable goals. But it really is meant to be a document that we can hold ourselves accountable to basically create an inclusive campus culture. And it's going to take work, and it's been said multiple times, but it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We didn't get here overnight, it's not going to be fixed overnight. But collectively, if every person, and John stole it, but we've said it, if every person on our school campus would truly own their 20 square feet, this could be an incredible place, greater than what it is today. Because the stories that you heard tonight of an example from students speaking should not exist in our school district. That should not be tolerated. We should be focused on dignity, kindness, and respect for everyone on our school campus, regardless. And we'll fight for that every day of the week until we basically accomplish that to the best of our human ability as educators, because it's what our kids deserve every single day. We are here in service to children, and that is our responsibility as educators. So I think the Board of Education will have additional information will come out to our students and our families and our faculty and staff tomorrow. But this has been a journey to get here, but we're very proud of the work. And we know there will be feedback. We know there will be ideas. We're prepared for that. But we have to start somewhere with the work that we put together on the journey that we've been on so far. So hopefully people will take time to digest the entire document because it's quite lengthy, but it's purposeful. Thank you, Diane, John, and Pat, really all the building admins, Scott and Shirley, and the rest of the admin team for everything they did to contribute to making tonight a success and presenting it, because we're proud of the work that's been done.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay, we're going to shift gears. It's related, but yet different in topics. It's going to go a little bit deeper into a couple of the areas from Mrs. Lofton as the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. So Lori oversees human resources within the school district. So she's going to go a little bit deeper in a couple of these areas to share some information with you as the board and our families at home. Mrs. Lofton.
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyers. Good evening, President Kalinowski, Vice President Newmoff, members of the board. Here tonight, as Superintendent said, to provide an update on our HR practices and our grant. As with everything else, and as you've heard tonight, we are starting with our statement of purpose to achieve the best. Sorry, I've heard this too many times tonight. To create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. Tonight's presentation is going to consist of 4 sections. First, I'm going to give you an overview of our employee groups. I haven't done this since I've been with the district, and felt like it was a good opportunity to do a little bit of HR 101 and how we do things in New Albany. An overview of our employee groups, how we attract, recruit, and select candidates for employment, how we support, engage, and retain them once they're here, and then again, some of our grant components and how we're doing on those pieces. That grant that was awarded, last spring. So the first slide on an overview of our employee group starts with our largest group, which is our licensed employees. We currently employ about 400 licensed employees, including our many teacher groups as well as our administrators. But when you think of teachers, you may not think of all of these individual roles that teachers have in our district. So academic intervention and support, deans, Mr. Samanich, English learner teachers, gifted intervention specialists, instructional coaches, related services such as occupational therapy and speech language, our school counselors, our school nurses, our special education teachers all fall under that teacher umbrella. And again, we have approximately 400 licensed staff when you add administrators to that mix. Our classified employee group includes our hourly employees that are in our OPSI local bargaining unit. These are non-teaching and non-administrator positions. We have about 240 classified staff, and those include our alternative learning center aides, building secretaries, bus drivers, cafeteria playground aides, cooks, food service workers, custodial maintenance and grounds, ed assistants, library aides, and mechanics. And last but not least, our salaried employees are our exempt from the bargaining units, and those are also non-teaching, non-administrator positions. We have about 30 exempt staff, including administrative assistants, assistant athletic directors, central office, department secretaries, and receptionists, our campus security, our clinic aides, our EMIS coordinator, our finance office members, our food service site supervisors, human resource specialists, IT support, registrar, and service technician. So in total, we employ about 670 teachers, administrators, and staff. And so we'll turn to how we attract, recruit, and select our employees. And this is a really comprehensive process. Before we can begin to actually even attract and recruit staff, we have to do an analysis of our needs. This takes approximately 3 to 4 weeks, and many of our directors and administrators who are sitting here will say it takes all year because they start very early in the fall thinking through this and beginning to gather data. But we spend formally about 3 to 4 weeks starting in February and March of data analysis to determine what we need as a district and what our students need. For our analysis, we look at every position in the district. We look at the role, function, and responsibility of the employee in each of those positions. And we examine projected enrollments. We look for the upcoming school year. We look at all the secondary course registrations, course by course. And generally speaking, that all happens at the same time our administrator vacancies around Central Ohio are occurring. So while we're in the process of trying to do the staffing analysis, we're also in a bit of an urgency because we're noticing other districts are starting to post jobs for both teachers and administrators. So you'll see that overlap on the timeline. Once our staffing analysis is complete, though, we can post our teacher vacancies that we are aware of at that time. And as we roll through the spring, we post additional vacancies that arise and even into as late as July, some years. As with administrators, if we do find that we know someone is going to be leaving, both with teachers and administrators, we try to get out in advance of that process if we know it's a position we absolutely have to fill. We might post something as an anticipated vacancy occasionally so that we can start to recruit and get the word out that New Albany is going to be hiring, we believe, this position. Most of our classified vacancies are posted as they occur throughout the school year, but we do hire quite a bit in July and August, typically our aides and educational assistants. So once we get through that process and start to post those vacancies, we do have to employ some strategies. We have to get creative sometimes. So some of these are pretty traditional and some of them might be a little less traditional. First of all, almost every university around Ohio and around the country hosts some sort of job fair for their graduates, upcoming graduates in all of their degree programs, but in particular in the teaching profession. So this year, for example, we're attending 9 teacher career fairs. Some are virtual, some are in person this year. We're attending 3 virtual networking sessions, which allows us to get to know teacher candidates prior to the job fairs. And on the classified, we're attending 2 in-person job fairs, one that just was recently hosted by the New Albany Chamber. We've also have established partnerships with many of these same colleges and universities and career centers, not only for their field placements when they have student teachers or candidates taking their early entry programs such as freshman experience and so on. But we also reach out to them very often when we have a long-term sub opportunity in the middle of a school year that we're having trouble filling or a very specific vacancy that is hard to fill. We look to our current staff for referrals on substitutes, perhaps friends, former colleagues who they know might be looking for a change. And we also rely on traditional advertising and marketing strategies. We use job boards, we use flyers, we use Valpak. We have used frequently the Ohio Means Jobs website, veteran services, chambers of commerce, as well as some even more non-traditional things, such as reaching out to local churches, senior centers, and community centers, which we have done this year quite a bit of. Just this year, we, as Diane mentioned, we started our Educators Rising chapter as part of our grant at the New Albany High School, the Aspiring Teacher Program, and we have a newly established classified tuition reimbursement program as well. These are known as grow your own strategies, where we're looking to help support our students who want to go away and become teachers to come back to us. And we're consider the teaching profession if they haven't considered that before, and also some of our classified staff who may be interested in pursuing an education degree and coming back to us in a different role. In terms of our hiring process, Michael mentioned hiring season. Hiring season is upon us. The process for filling vacancies applies to all positions, whether it's throughout the school year or whether it is now during hiring season, so to speak. We do make sure that all of our administrators are trained in the use of AppleTrack, our online application system. We've been training in implicit bias, and we've also trained on the use of our tools and processes in HR. So interview tools, we have electronic forms for doing reference checks and so on. So we will provide information about all those tools and processes and training in those. The paper screening is our first step, and Michael said to me, it's really not paper screening anymore, Lori, but that's still what we call it. Paper screening is our first real step, which means we're reviewing all the applications, and on paper, we are looking for those candidates we want to interview. So we're looking at cover letters, employment history, references that the person has included, so that we can select our pool of candidates that we're going to interview. Those candidates that are offered an interview generally come to meet with a supervisor and or principal. And then for the teaching vacancies in particular, there's always a second round interview unless we have interviewed the person before. Perhaps we're into July and we've done several interviews for the particular grade level. Then there might only be one, but almost every interview for teachers is at least 2 rounds. And that second interview includes potential colleagues, department chairs, sometimes district leadership, depending on the role. References are checked once there are finalists and a recommendation is made to the HR office. We, meaning Ms. Blicky and myself, confirm salary step, anticipated start date, licensure if it's required, and so on, so that the supervisor can then make the offer if we approve. And then once the candidate accepts, we put them on the personnel agenda for you to approve as well. So once we've hired our employees, our goal is, of course, to support and engage them so that they will stay. We have a very comprehensive, again, system for supporting and engaging our staff. And staff that are hired prior to the school year come to a large group session that we where we train both classified and administrators and teachers all at the same time on some of our policies and procedures, our culture initiatives. Mr. Savinich and Mr. Hood have spoken at those benefits that are available to them and so on. And then we take a deeper dive in an orientation for, depending on the particular classification, teachers meet together and a lot of our classified staff meet with their supervisor more directly in their work site. But we're teaching them, learning the systems that they need to be using. They're getting their technology. They're learning about performance evaluation, meeting mentors and colleagues that are going to support them and train them. And then, as you know, we also, and it's been mentioned earlier, we have district-wide professional development 3 to 4 days a year. And we have building and department professional development. And this is important. When we go to job fairs, Students coming out of college ask us, how do you provide professional development for your teachers? How do you support? I'm going to be a new teacher. How are you going to support me? They want to know that they're going to get that high quality professional development. One of the best ways to engage and retain employees is to provide growth and leadership opportunities. Depending on the department and the position, we try to ensure that staff are aware of the opportunities for growth and leadership that are available to them. And we try to support them in meeting their growth goals personally. So an example might be a bus driver who might want to someday be what we call an OBI, which is an onboard instructor. It might be they might want to become a route specialist. A custodian might want to become a head custodian or a maintenance worker. A teacher might want to become an instructional coach, an academic intervention teacher, a department chair, or move into administration or school counseling. So we try to provide those support for those opportunities when we know that those individuals have an interest in those growth paths, growth leadership opportunities. We also feel that our culture, which you have heard all about this evening, and I don't need to go into detail about, but our BIC initiative, our R-Factor initiative, and our district well-being initiative combine to create a very welcoming culture for new teacher candidates and new employees. We have a strong collaboration with our PLE and OC leadership, where issues can be problem solved in advance. We're very proactive. We communicate with them regularly. We have meetings regularly. And in a more formal way, we also offer an annual staff climate survey where employees can provide feedback to us on how we're doing. And you've seen some of that information in the BIC framework as well, where we've used that data from a variety of surveys. On the compensation side, next slide. On the compensation slide, we specifically look to retain employees through our academic achievement stipends, attendance incentives, and tuition reimbursement programs, because some of these are they're definitely unique district to district, and we feel that ours is very competitive and is a definite support to our ability to retain our teachers and staff. We also complete a regular market analysis of our compensation levels for each of our employee groups, and we do collect exit data, including sometimes one-on-one interviews and working on surveys for each employee group that we will be sending out to see if there are things we could have done better that might have made the person choose to stay rather than to leave. We do feel these strategies that I just outlined are helping with our retention. For example, our turnover data suggests that we don't struggle in the way some districts around the Ohio and even around the country do with retention of our teachers. For example, between the 2017-2018 school year and the 2020-21 school year, we hired 82 new teaching staff. 26% of them have left. That is a really big number, and that might depress you. However, when you look at the data and you dig into the reasons why they left, only 6% of those who left for a competitive, a district that was not the district in their residential area. So a competitive district. The other reasons they left were because they were relocating, they were becoming stay-at-home parents, they had health concerns, they had performance concerns, they were joining a family business. There was many reasons that were really out of our control and were kind of no-brainers for the individuals who left. Again, just 6% left because they went to another district that was not their residential. So we're very proud of that. We think that that shows that the things that we're doing, support, engage, and retain are working. We are working to do a little bit better job of finding ways to get this data from our classified staff. Many of our classified staff hesitate to give a reason why they're leaving. They just want us to know they're leaving. So we are going to continue to work on that and dig a little deeper into that and how we can better support them. Finally, and what you've probably been waiting for, is our connection to the BIC framework presentation, an update on our grant to diversify the education profession. So first, what is this? In 2019, November 2019, the Ohio Department of Education published a report from their statewide task force on diversifying the education profession. Some of their recommendations focused on pipeline and retention issues, and they recommended grants from ODE to districts to work on these issues and challenges. We saw this as an opportunity to jumpstart some of the things we had been talking about in the early stages of our big work when we called it our culture and climate plan. Our staff climate surveys at that time indicated that staff felt we had done a really good job of hiring quality employees, but we were not so good in staff's perceived responses in the survey at hiring a diverse workforce and retaining a diverse workforce. And so we applied and were awarded $70,000 to use through the following, that was in spring 21, so it's this school year and next school year through June of 2023. Student diversity, for context, student diversity on our campus is just over 35%, and our staff diversity when we applied for the grant was about 3.5% of our teachers and 12% of our non-teaching staff. Statewide, for context also, nearly 6% of teachers are from diverse backgrounds, and 32% of students are from diverse backgrounds. And so our student population diversity is higher than the state average, and our teacher diversity is lower than the state average. And also thinking about the overall decline in the number of college students entering teacher preparation programs in general, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to diversify our workforce in schools. However, we've had some success even leading into the, just in the early days of getting this grant. Last school year, we were able to hire, with the hard work of our administrators and teachers who participated, 18% of our newly hired teachers and 10% of our newly hired staff came from diverse backgrounds. And so we feel like these are just getting the grant components off the ground, and we should be able to continue to see that kind of progress in the next couple of years. For the how we're going to do this, we took a systemic approach. And again, you've heard about some of these this evening. We took a systemic approach. We didn't just look at HR practices, but we aligned it with our overall culture and climate efforts, which have now become, of course, the building an inclusive campus culture for all students. As the first item is the tuition reimbursement for classified staff, and I've mentioned that, and so has Diane. We only have had one classified staff member apply for that, but we just announced it last spring. And so we feel teacher or classified staff that are taking courses during this school year and summer will apply again in the fall. Our district PD focus this year has been on implicit bias, which aligns very well with our administrator training last spring with the Otterbein modules on implicit biases and how we can perhaps think very strategically and intentionally when we're in an interview process that we're not letting those implicit biases that we have get in the way of a fair interview. This spring, we're also including teachers in that work, teachers that will participate on the hiring teams. The third component is fourth component, is the Educators Rising chapter. We're very excited to be bringing this back to New Albany. We had a Future Educators of America chapter years ago, and it sort of fizzled out, and in many areas around the state of Ohio, that was no longer supported with interest from students. And it's come back as Educators Rising nationally, and it has had a lot of success nationally, and we're very excited. Mrs. Elizabeth Ganda was selected as the advisor, and she has a diverse group of 10 to 15 students who are meeting every month, and many more who have expressed interest but haven't been able to make that commitment. They are doing hands-on activities, they are having guest speakers, they're setting up shadowing opportunities in elementary classrooms. The chapter also aligns with our efforts to expand opportunities for students to explore career pathways. And so we're hopeful that this will help on many levels. And finally, our big facilitators, who again, you've heard about tonight, were selected in each building. And they have been supporting building level activities. They've been contributing to the district's culture, building inclusive culture work with John, Diane, and Pat. And they're working, of course, with their teams at the building and administrators on any building needs that arise. When we wrote this grant, it was really important that we focus on both short-term and long-term goals. As you've heard, this is a long-term commitment. And so we have the short-term goals such as training and professional development, but we also have those longer-term goals, the pipeline support from the Educators Rising chapter, tuition reimbursement for classified staff who may just be taking a few classes at a time. We also paid close attention to selecting components that would integrate well into the culture work and would be sustainable also fiscally after the grant dollars are gone. We are incorporating some HR policies and practices intended to support the goals in the grant, such as tracking data better, finding ways to get data that we don't currently have, and early hiring whenever it is possible to do so. Many of the strategies I've cited tonight that we are doing in New Albany are also cited in national research as some of the most effective recruiting, hiring, and retaining strategies for a diverse workforce. Things like using data to inform the strategies, institutional partnerships, early hiring, implicit bias training, and opportunities for measuring PD and developing an overall culture that is accepting of all and belonging, that sense of belonging. Finally, I'm happy to add that we are on track to meet all of our components for this school year for the grant, the implementation of the new chapter, the big facilitators, the professional development on implicit bias, and then the tuition reimbursement program as well. And in addition, being able to hire more than obviously 3.5% of our current staff from diverse backgrounds was a big win for us. So we will be reporting to the department in the third quarter of the grant that we have met those components for this school year. In conclusion, we are stronger together when we put students first, and everything we do and the things that I've outlined for you tonight are in service to our students. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or if you have comments for me.
I'm not ready.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know, I shouldn't have said anything. It's well done. It's what we should be doing, is doing whatever we can to attract and retain the best talent that we can get, and to leave no stone unturned in finding the best talent that we can get. And so I appreciate all the work, all that's being done here, and I appreciate the recognition that we want to have a diverse background of teachers and staff, because that's part of the learning experience for our kids, right? Is to have exposure to people from all kinds of different backgrounds who have all kinds of different viewpoints, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a continuation of, I mean, it's a good reason, or it was good that we had both of these presentations this evening. This is probably a dangerous thing to say or ask. Are we doing, I mean, as it relates to, we're obviously doing fine in retaining the employees that we hire, but are we, I mean, compared to what we're seeing elsewhere, are we doing, I mean, I know we're going to be trying to do more here, but are we doing all that we can right now?
Well, that's a very good question. I think in the classified world, all districts are struggling with turnover because employees who are in those hourly positions have so many private sector opportunities right now that provide perks that we used to sort of win the game on, right? So having breaks, having summers, you know, in some roles, you would have, you know, a summer seasonal schedule that was commensurate with what your kids were doing. That was a perk for our schools. It was a way for us to attract some of our classified staff in particular, and teachers. However, with all of the flexibility now that has been gained in the private sector, we can't compete with that. So we have flexibility of schedule, but we don't have flexibility of schedule within the specific work days. So I think it's a challenge more so for classified hiring than it is for hiring teachers. I will tell you that I meet regularly with Central Ohio HR directors. We have twice a year Ohio HR directors come together to share strategies, to share data, to share you know, what's working, what's not, challenges, and commiserate with challenges and things like that. And I think there's always more you can do. I think it's just a really tough time to be a public sector employer right now.
And you mentioned the numbers of students versus teachers. And I know you've addressed this, but just to make sure that people who are listening catch it. I mean, part of the challenge, from what I understand in discussions we've had, is that sometimes it's all dependent on the pool of resumes and the people who are applying for the jobs, and sometimes you don't necessarily
have the diversity applying that you would like, or there's significant competition for individuals. So, I mean, how much of this is our effort versus, you know, the broader, I mean, we are competing against, you know, UA and Dublin and others for great candidates. So, you know, how much of this is on us versus how much of it is a broader thing?
And our higher ed partners as well have been working for a long time to diversify their teacher preparation program candidates, administrator candidates. You might be surprised, I haven't checked this year, but you might be surprised to learn that campuses like Ohio State don't really have much more diversity percentage-wise in their administrator and teacher preparation programs than smaller universities. I was pretty surprised when I first learned that it was about 10%, and I was getting that answer from all of the universities in Central Ohio, about 10%. I'm hopeful. I mean, I know they're all trying very hard to recruit diverse candidates, but you know, something you actually triggered something that I skipped over because I was afraid I was repeating too much, so I was skipping a few things. Diversity isn't just gender and inclusivity of race and ethnicity. It's also being very intentional about trying to find males that want to teach in elementary grades and kindergarten classes. And it's intentional about finding career changers. So we're a little bit older generation, because that also provides that other perspective and another lens. It's also looking for, in some cases, secondary math and science, higher level math and science and wellness courses don't have as many, I'm not saying we don't right now, but as many females teaching in those particular courses. So it's really looking at the whole picture, and it really goes position by position. And when someone posts, when one of these administrators posts a vacancy, they have to look at their specific circumstances and what do they need. And then it's my job to help them have that pool that has all of those in it, right? So that's a big challenge. But we're hopeful that the efforts, the long-term efforts to grow your own pieces will help encourage people to go into the profession, which many of our teacher friends tell us has a really bad rep right now. You know, we just get bashed for everything, and it's been a struggle for many years. But we think, those of us who are still here, still standing, think that it's a very noble profession, and it's a calling for a lot of us. It's what we do. It's what we always wanted to do, and it's what we still want to do. And it's a great profession to live your life in service of students. So we'll keep going to those job fairs, and we've revised our marketing materials to be more specific, to share and showcase our diversity in New Albany schools with those 35% students. Student diversity, we're out there with, going to one tomorrow morning early, and we're out there encouraging students to come give us a look.
Well, again, I do think this is important work, and in my previous comments, when I said how important it was that we included a diversity of viewpoint, that may be the most challenging element of diversity to identify and therefore hire, because most of the other areas of diversity that we think about are almost identifiable by sight. You know, it's not that difficult to tell sex, right, or race. A lot of that is very, it's just obvious. But how are we making sure and making it safe? Because when I look at safe, supported, and connected, and that's easy to get behind, right? But how do we make it safe for students and employees when they think differently than their coworkers, than fellow students, when they have different perspectives that are different, right? And it is going to be in conflict with others, and it may be in conflict with the prevailing views. So how do we make sure that it's safe for everybody, regardless of their perspective, as long as they're kind, to John's point of view, right? As long as the behavior is such that when there's disagreement, it's done in a kind and supportive way. But how do we make sure that we can hire and create this diversity that is truly diverse across all the ways that we define it? So how are we hiring for people that education is typically thought of as being monolithic? in terms of political viewpoints. So how do we make sure that we can hire people who are on the other side of the aisle?
So, again, great question. You collaborated, correct?
Nope,
Collaborated on
you
your
talk it
question. Very difficult question, but it's the hard conversations we've started to have in our district. I mean, all of my colleagues here have been sitting across the table from teachers and staff and having these hard conversations. How do I wrestle with my own viewpoints and how you're affected by them, and how to, tell me what you think about this and I'll tell you what I think about this. And again, as long as it's respectful and as long as it's not, anything that is offensive, we have to have those conversations, because we'll never understand one another if we can't talk about our difference. And our differences are what unite us if we really embrace them.
True. But again, how do we make sure that we bring people in who have those different perspectives, that they feel safe, that they feel like it's okay? Like, one of the things that we all learned over the last couple of years is that a lot of conversations, when you disagree with the prevailing narrative, it's hard, right? It's not welcome. So how do we make it welcome for people to have these sorts of conversations?
So we had a conversation earlier with administrators about the kinds of questions we're going to start getting asked in interviews from students coming in from universities, and certainly from career changers or from teachers in other districts and staff that are working in other districts. They're going to start asking us hard questions about our culture. They're going to ask the kind of questions you're asking. They might be hesitant because they aren't sure if they should share it. And we can just offer that welcoming, belonging sense in that interview. That's the best we can do, is to say, here's what we believe. Here's the work we've been doing. Come join us in this work and be a part of this. So we share. So I've put together a one-pager that we can share with candidates that talks about our initiatives that we're working on, our well-being, our RFACT, our PIC initiative, the facilitators being in place to help have conversations, help administrators, having those conversations. So it's really about sharing the work that we're doing and then displaying that in our interview process.
I mean, I think that's a great comment, that if we start the conversation by making clear that we are open to all types of diversity, as long as we're kind and respectful, as long as we share that up front, you may very well get more people willing to talk about it. Because they're more likely to feel safe if we start the conversation that way, as opposed to, most of the time when people are coming for an interview, right, they want the job in a lot of cases. So they don't necessarily share things they think aren't going to play well. So the more we open it up, the more likely we are to get diversity of opinion. So thanks.
No tough questions for me.
Thank you.
I didn't partner up with them. No, Lori, it was a great presentation. A lot of really good information that I don't know that really had a chance to see before. So I appreciate it. I love the grow your own strategy. Reading some of that last week, I didn't realize we had work like that in play, and I think that that's really, really great. For me, it's, we have such an extremely talented group of people that work in this district. And I think that, having them, just as where your conversation went, Phil, with Lori, where, we not only do we have great people, but we have great people working in a fantastic culture that's been created here that really believe and buy into it. And, that shows through the lack of attrition, that we're having in the district. I think that's great. And so then just pulling a full circle where, this work on diversity and not only having a really talented group of folks that come in here every day to interact with our students, but having that talented group that is more representative of our students as a whole too, is just, keeps cranking us up, another notch above the rest of the districts here in Central Ohio and throughout the state. So I think it's a great work. I think it's really well thought out, good strategies, and great support behind it. So thank you.
I appreciate the presentation. I think having been on the board and being a part of lots of discussions, I have a sense of our process, but appreciate you laying it out in granularity. Unfortunately, I want to ask a couple more granular questions. Did I hear 82 hires in teachers in the since 2017?
2017 to 2021. I did not include this year's teachers because they haven't left. They wouldn't have left yet. That
Sure.
makes sense. I mean, they
So
could have.
Is that about, that's 4 years if I've got that, is that about 20 per year that we hire? Is that kind of?
We had a big year in 2017. So it ebbs and flows. It's not 20 per year. It's not like that. It depends on how many staff, left the prior year. It depends on new additional positions that we offer. It depends on shifting assignments and student enrollment and maybe burgeoning in one area and ebbing in the other. So 2017 was a big number.
10 to 30 per year.
Somewhere, yes, a low year
Just
would
trying
be
to
10
get a
and a
sense of
high year would be 30.
Quickly you
Yes.
change, the mix could change with 400 is the base. And then you mentioned the strategies, the partnerships. Are there particular colleges that we absolutely go on campus and are very integrated with their campus hiring?
So we go to Ohio State because it's the biggest. We go generally to Bowling Green because it's one of the largest producers of teacher candidates. We go to Miami because they tend to have a lot of New Albany alum, and we want to encourage recruiting our alumni back to our campus. We go to the small Central Ohio universities, Capital, Otterbein, and Ohio Dominican. And then we're going, this is a benefit of COVID. There is such a thing. Last year, in 2020, many of the job fairs were just simply canceled if they hadn't happened yet. And then in 2021, many of the job fairs, all of them, I think, were virtual. And so universities started to see that this was an option. And so we are participating in, as I said, networking. There are 2 diversity showcases that are virtual that we're participating in with Ohio University and University of Toledo. And then we're interviewing virtually with Grambling State University and Florida A&M University, 2 historically Black colleges and universities that we would not have had access to prior to the virtual platforms coming up and being used for interview.
Thank you. And then just the last question. There's 10 to 30. How many do we typically tend to hire off campus versus experience? And I'm speaking about teachers.
So every teacher vacancy posts first to our internal candidates. And if someone is hired internally, and then, I'm sorry, you mean not our
I mean,
campus.
like, are we taking
It's been a long day.
more likely to bring somebody in
From a
for
campus.
intermediate school who's coming off campus at Bowling Green? Or are we looking more for somebody with 3 or 4
BA
years?
0 versus experience.
I got it. I figured that out as soon as I started talking. Thank you. I apologize. I don't have a percentage of that. I will tell you that the first vacancies that occur, we tend to have a little bit more on the experience side. And then after we've hired a couple of experienced staff, we'll probably look to those new teachers. But I will say that what I said earlier is still true. I might have all veteran staff in a particular grade level team, and I really want a new college graduate in that role. So it really is an analysis from the administrators for which is the best person, the highest quality candidate that's going to add value to this team in a different way, add that other perspective, add that fresh, right out of college energy and new ideas and whatever, versus I need a little experience on this team.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Lori's in Dayton tomorrow in case you want to go.
Bright and early. I did forget Dayton, didn't
You
I?
did,
Oh
that's
my
why, but you're
gosh.
going there tomorrow morning, so that's why I gave it to you.
I'll just real quick comment. I know this is, super important work. Unlike a lot of businesses, people are our business. Our staff, our teachers are our business. And as we talk about culture, they create culture. Our staff, our talent is our culture. So how are you kind of interviewing for that piece too?
Also this evening, we just had a similar conversation. I feel like I spent all day. We have integrated questions about creating inclusive classrooms, working with colleagues, more questions about working with colleagues that are from diverse backgrounds into our interviewing tools and our questions. We're using the behavioral interview questions, which kind of get at how you respond in a certain situation versus just answering a question about what you learned in your coursework. think, again, the kids coming out of colleges at least are asking us the same question. So.
And I, love all the work that you're doing around support, engage, retain. I think when we take care of our people, we're building culture that way too. So, the only other piece is just continuing those efforts to have more role models that reflect our student population. And it sounds like you're doing everything you can right now. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. I think at all districts, again, I meet regularly, all districts are really working on this to the best of our abilities. And again, it's our welcoming culture in our buildings when they come into that interview. It's us getting them to the buildings and then buildings bringing them into that welcoming interview and continue to meet our goals to hire more.
Thank you, Lori. So we started with that. All right. So next on our agenda for this evening is a conversation. You all are actually going to be part of a little bit of work that we're doing. This was going to be a conversation we were going to have at an offsite, but we couldn't come up with a date. So we're starting a few of our board meetings a little earlier to get some of this work done. So when we stepped back and thought about all of the work going on around building an inclusive campus culture, and we looked at our statement of purpose, we felt like we had some work to do to better define what we meant by creating a culture of accountability. Our statement of purpose is really what we're trying to achieve. And we felt, along with all the work that's going on, we should also define how do we want to interact together. And I just want to make sure that before I go into this, everyone understands this is not in conflict with any values, behaviors, outcomes, ERO. It was meant to kind of incorporate all of that, as well as be a reflection of our thinking on culture. So everyone knows we can't meet unless we're at a board meeting. So what I did was I had many in-depth conversations with each one of our board members. I got their input. I created a draft based on everyone's input. I shared it with them. I got a little more feedback, and that's what we're seeing tonight. So for the first time, we'll look at it as a team, and you guys will have to bear with us as we work through it. So just again, to ground us, our purpose, our statement of purpose is to create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. And okay. As an introduction to our thinking around values and behaviors, we wrote a little preamble. Our culture of accountability has been built on the foundation that we are each responsible for our behavior, that we own our responses to challenges and circumstances, the events, that we are stronger when we work together, and that we will strive to be better every day to produce exceptional outcomes. Hopefully that all sounds super familiar to everybody with the EROs and the VBOs. And then I created a value statement that I got individual input on from each board member, and I'll just take us through it. NAPLS is committed to fostering an environment of kindness, dignity, and respect to ensure the well-being of our school community. And I feel like these are all words we kept saying together tonight. So it made me really happy to hear that, this echoes everything everyone's been saying all night. And then similar to the statement of purpose, we wanted to define each of these words for clarity. And as you see red on the screen, the red are the additional possible edits or additions to or subtractions from the statement that I got after I sent the draft out. So in order to assure clarity of understanding, we have defined each of the words as follows. Committed. We are dedicated to policies and actions that reinforce these values. Fostering. We will encourage and promote the development and ownership of behaviors to produce positive outcomes consistent with these values. Environment, wherever we interact with each other within the school campus and related activities. Kindness, we will act in ways that honor individual uniqueness and trust in the goodwill and good intentions of one another. Dignity, accepting and supporting the self-worth of others. Respect, we will be considerate of the feelings, viewpoints, rights, or traditions of others. And to get this work done tonight, I feel like we have a tired group already, but what I want to do is just start with the header, which is the statement. NAPLS is committed to fostering an environment of kindness, dignity, and respect. And there was a suggestion that maybe we need to explain why this is important. So the suggestion was to add to ensure the well-being of our school community. So I want to just start there to open the discussion in terms of, do we feel that adds, or do we need that, or do we feel like the statement, the original statement, stands for itself? So I'll open it for discussion.
Well, I'll jump in then. Since I could. I don't think it's necessary. I think everything that we do here is to ensure the well-being of our school community. I think it goes without saying. I mean, someone could say NAPLS is committed to fostering an environment of kindness, dignity, and respect because it's the right thing to do. So I'm not opposed to the language. I think it's much more clear when we're just succinct and say we're committed to fostering an environment of kindness, dignity, and respect, period.
So what you're saying is it almost sounds too narrow to say we're doing it to ensure the well-being.
Well, yeah, and it goes without saying. I mean, it's just like over descriptive. So that's my former journalistic editor. I just don't, it's good, but it's not necessary. So I'm the first negative person of the night. There you go.
No, it's not negative.
So
It's a work in progress.
yeah, so that's my perspective.
I would just offer, I'm not opposed to it either. I think John raises a great point that you could say a lot of things after that that are aspirational and really great outcomes in addition to ensuring the well-being of our school community. And as I think about our statement of purpose, to me, this is a set of values that help us achieve that accountability and that those best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. I mean, and as Mr. McClellan was saying, his alternative to this version, I was thinking, well, you could just as easily add to assist in achieving the best academic development outcomes for each student. Because to me, this is the tone from the top. This is the golden rule. This is, setting the tone for those 7th and 8th graders as to how we want to operate as a school community. And it's all with the objective of our holistic statement of purpose, both academically and developmentally. So again, I'm not against it, but I can certainly see how we could bake it into the broader messaging that we've been talking about since 2015.
What do you think, Mike?
I mean, I think you guys bring up good points. For me, I look at the part that's in black, and that's kind of the what. And I guess it's the why for me is what's in red. It's like, well, why are we doing this? Why is it important? How do we provide clarity to people in the community around why, as a board, we're committed to fostering this environment of kindness, dignity, and respect? So for me, the why was important. I think you make a great point, John, that those things are important for a lot of reasons. Another reason for me, wanting to have something afterwards was, what, again, I guess it comes back to the clarity and the focus, and, the well-being of a student is, or anyone in our campus, but I'm really thinking about the students here, students first, right? Is the well-being is the entire student. It's the academic, it's, we talk about all the time, right? Mental, emotional, social. And at least for me, it helps provide direction on, well, great, is this just a set of words, or are we going to do something behind it? And I think it brings great connectivity to what Pat, Diane, and John are talking about. Maybe it needs to connect more broadly into other things within the district, so I certainly don't want to limit it. But for me, it was really the why. Otherwise, they're great words, and back to it again, some of the conversation we had, hey, the golden rule, this could all be really simple work if we just started treating each other the right way, right? Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Wish it was.
So Mike, for you, it's kind of like, why is this important? Why is it important that we treat each other this way?
Yeah. To pick up on Mike's comment, it strikes me that if we stay focused, so I'm generally a fan of brevity, right? The shorter, the better. It's easier for people to remember. It's easier for people to repeat. When you look at our statement of purpose, I would imagine everybody in this room could repeat it from memory and get it right. It's a function of brevity, it's a function of clarity, and it's a function of repetition over the last 6 years. And when I look at the words in black, and I think about exactly how do we make this easy? Well, if we focus on kindness, dignity, and respect, I think that makes it a lot easier. If we try to define the why we're focusing on kindness, dignity, and respect, I think we open ourselves up to things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. I think it is potentially a recipe for messing around with it. I think if we just stay focused on kindness, dignity, and respect, that we will all be better off. I just think brevity and simplicity is almost always better. So I would prefer to keep it shorter.
So it's interesting to listen to it in your conversation. So I would challenge you to focus on the word environment for a moment, because a similar addition has been made in the definition of environment that may resolve the beginning statement in a different way, because you're adding within the school campus and related activities. So it's been qualified to define an environment. What does that represent? So it's localized to the school campus, the learning campus. So is there a solution in the definition of the word environment that achieves what Mike is in search of for the why differently than the opening statement?
Can you give a suggestion?
Because you haven't talked about the addition under environment.
Well, we were going line by line.
Exactly. Jumping ahead.
We want the teacher to give us the answer.
So that was going to be my question on environment. I know that we have, we always talk about, we have the kids for 6 hours a day and then they go home to this other world or do whatever they're doing. So I get that, there's some limitation on our role, but do we need to say within the school campus or related activities? Because we're basically saying, we want you to act a certain way here, and then when you leave, you can do whatever you want. So my view of it is, no, it's wherever we interact with each other.
Are we jumping to that one
Let's go to that. Let's go to environment. We'll put a placeholder on the statement itself and go to environment. So what do we all think? Is it wherever we interact with each other, or is it limited to within the school campus and related activities?
Well, it's a really important question to answer. the way I think about it is this. Everything we do here has impact beyond here, right? Everything a student learns in our school, whether it's math, science, social studies, or having to do with social emotional development, everything they learned here, the R factor, it leaves here. It goes with them. They bring it, they incorporate it into who they are, and they bring it home. And sometimes families like it, and sometimes families don't like it. And ultimately, the responsibility for these sorts of things, it rests with the student, and it rests with families. When it happens, when those kids come back here, it rests with us. And so I think it's critical that while we are defining how we expect how we expect students, faculty, staff, administration, the board, how we expect to interact with each other while we are in school and while we are in school-related activities, that's our sandbox, that's our purview. When people leave our school campus and they go home and they interact with their families, they will have a different experience. And it's not our job to tell them how they should be interacting with each other outside of school, in my view. I think that's a really, really slippery slope. And while I want people to be kind, dignified, and respectful in all areas, we all know that we're all not. And I think, in the family environment, if it's two students, I think it's up to the families to decide how they want their children to interact. And I don't think it's our job. Now, again, when these kids come back to school, it's our job.
Yeah, okay. Let's be clear about something. We are not the parents. We're not the parents. So I'm with you on that. We're not, but what we're talking about is we're talking about fostering an environment. Okay, so it is an environment. I understand. I recognize that is built here, but as you said, it's what they take with them. And so I would hope that extends then beyond. However, that doesn't mean that everyone's necessarily going to always do it the exact same way. I understand that. I recognize that, but I still think that the basic principles of kindness, dignity, and respect are things that should be not only taught, but promoted. And so that should be as soon as we walk out of these walls, we don't drop the gloves. This is not ice hockey, right?
I know. I can just walking to Market Street and going to Starbucks after school.
Well, that's that's a perfect example.
It's a free for all.
Well, and I would even say if we say it's only applying to within school campus and related activities, what are we saying then? That they can treat each other however they want outside of school? And bullying exists outside of school and problematic behavior outside of school. And I think that we should make the statement that this is how we expect students to treat each other always.
So I agree that those things do happen. And I want kids to be respectful and dignified and kind in all areas of their life. Yet if there's bullying that goes on at Starbucks, that's Starbucks' job. It's the parents' job, and if it becomes violent, it's the police's job. It's not ours. And I think it's a really slippery slope for us to go down that path of wanting to police that.
I would say, again, to me, we called this a value statement earlier. Maybe, and John used the word promoting values. To me, this is, you're right. First of all, I agree with John's statements. We are not parents. I'm just reiterate that we are not intending to take the place of parents here. But we're intending, I think, to set forth a set of values, aspirational, that we would like to have the community, or the environment, however we define that, operate in such a way that with kindness, dignity, and respect. And that is going to spill over into Starbucks. That is going to spill over into a event after a football game or whatever the school activity, the extension of that. that will, in reality, spill over a little bit into the home, where there's going to be discussions at home. We would encourage those to be held with kindness, dignity, and respect, because we know that that will then be brought to school the next day and have an impact on our culture and on our environment. So I don't have any concern with being aspirational and saying, hey, let's do better together. Let's look at the last couple of years where we could do better. And then we say something here, do better every day is a different statement.
That's in
That's
the
something else.
yeah.
So, you know, I don't have I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Darrow. That could be viewed as an overreach, but I think this is, I don't think we've got any mandates in here. Certainly, we're aspiring to this behavior, and I wouldn't be concerned with.
Well, so let me ask it as a question then. Let's say that it does spill over to Starbucks, right? What, if anything, would we as a school do about it?
Mrs. LeBeau, would you like to come and give testimony to every Friday at Starbucks?
We are calling parents, letting them know, we talk to the children. Call parents, let them know what the behavior is. And their response.
Can you just detail it out for me a little bit? So
Donnie, you have to go to the
You
microphone.
come up to the
You can't-
So tell me how it happens, right? So it happens. How do you become aware that whatever it was happened?
So I might get a text from a parent who witnessed it, who has my cell phone number. I might get an email from a Starbucks person. Mr. Freeman and I have been over there. We introduced ourselves. We're making regular visits. Kids know we're making regular visits. It's been better. We pop in at the library. Once we get that email, then truly we stop everything and we head on over. We talk to the kiddos. We call parents after that evening. When we get back into the building, we call parents. Sometimes we call them from ourselves. We wait for the parents to pick the child up. We want to be good partners, and our kids don't act like that. They know that. They're great kids.
So let's say that you call the parent and the parent says, and you know, the student who was
Naughty.
not being respectful disagreed, right? That the problem was that there was a disagreement, right? They have different viewpoints on something. And you call the parent says, I agree with my child. You know, they disagree with this other student. And so how do we avoid jumping into values that families have that may be different than what other families have?
It's okay to disagree,
Okay.
but the manner in which we disagree and the manner that it has been brought to our attention is not okay.
So if we had something like this, we could say, you know, we treat each other with kindness, dignity, and respect wherever we interact with each other. And
It is not respectful to play fight in front of a eyeglass vendor store. That's not respectful to the people coming in.
So I liked your answer because it's okay to disagree. And, you know, that's the sort of thing that I'm concerned about, that parents, you know, will, if we start intervening in areas outside of school or outside of school related activities, parents are going to say, none of your business. So the fact that you responded that it's about how we're, not that there's a disagreement on a particular topic, but it's the way the disagreement happened.
So,
And I'm certain, you know, in that particular incident that Mr. Freeman and I dealt with, the next place would have been the police. They in fact had called and we got up there quicker. And I'm certain parents would prefer that. I would prefer
I would
that for our
prefer that.
children.
All right, so, I mean, we could be here all night, I know, but let's throw a scenario of, thank you, Mrs. LeBeau.
thank you.
Because unfortunately it happens on cyberbullying, right? So obviously there are a number of issues there. It's happening out could be happening anywhere, I guess, cyber, but in that situation, even though it's not necessarily on school campus, it is still something that we step in on, do we not?
Generally speaking, yes, if we have the information, which typically gets shared with us. Because sometimes it's done on the student's NAPLS account, which then creates a gaggle alert, which then we get the notification on regardless of the time of day. Depending on the threat level associated to it, there's different things that happen from an administrative perspective or a police perspective. So yes, I mean, it's an extension of school.
Right. So I guess now we can start parsing words, but that, I guess, is part of my point. It's like, these kids are all walking out of these buildings and heading over to Market Street. That is kind of an extension to a degree. Engaging with each other online is an extension of it to a degree. It's not just going to the basketball game or the football game. And we do have a code of conduct, do we not? I mean, we do hold kids responsible for actions.
Including acceptable use of technology. That's an actual requirement.
Right. So I know there's a fine line, because there would be some parents who say you're too strict, others who say leave my kid alone, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, I think it wouldn't make any sense, and we wouldn't be accomplishing anything by saying this is how we expect you to act here, but then when you walk out the door, it's a free-for-all. So that's my only thing. I get your point, though. We're not the parents. I'll say it again. We're not the parents. Never will be, never should be. But we do have, in order for this group of people to be able to, interact and learn and grow and accomplish what they need to accomplish, there have to be some rules and some expectations on how we behave.
I would say we aren't going to achieve the culture we want if we aren't expecting kids to treat each other this way whenever they interact.
Our expectations are certainly there. Establishing boundaries of authority is not the same as expecting a free-for-all outside of those boundaries. Right. I think that's a binary that is, I think, deeply flawed.
I would go where Paul went, which is, this is aspirational, that we're asking them to live this way.
We have a code of conduct that's going to govern discipline. This is value statement in support of building the inclusive campus culture, or ensuring the well-being of our school community, or any other number of definitions.
In that context, are you comfortable?
I still think it is potentially problematic. And, we've used Starbucks as an example because we have incidents there. We've used the library as an example because we have incidents there. But let's say the interaction happens at another parent's home. Are you gonna go over to that family's house? I don't think so. Maybe.
Well, it depends. I mean, there may not be any school consequence from it, but to the point that was made, whatever happens on Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday is on our doorstep Monday morning.
Exactly.
And it doesn't wait till Monday morning to get here. So especially with phones and social media and Instagram and everything else that the kids do. So it's 24/7 approach that if it happens on a Friday night at 11 o'clock and we find out about it, depending on what it is, we react at 11:01 on Friday night and we do something about it because that's what we do. Not every circumstance is like that. But it does happen that, okay, there's a party and there's 40 kids in a basement and there's photos on social media of inappropriate activity in that house. So we intervene versus the police getting called if we can, because we would rather be the intervention to work with the family and the parents that might be upstairs or the parents that aren't upstairs that all went out to dinner together and left 40 people in the basement.
And I think most families would want that too.
Right,
right?
but
To
that's
Mrs.
the
LeBeau's
goal,
point, right?
is we try to help if we can. Doesn't mean it's going to result in a school consequence. It's not discipline, but it's a learning opportunity for kids to talk about, did you own your R? And what you created the event. I mean, the event you created, we're responding to.
But I think, to your point, is at what point does the parents choosing, frankly, as crazy as it is, parents, to leave 40 kids in the basement and then leave, which I think is stupid. But that's my personal opinion, not the opinion of the board. But, you know, if they're choosing to do that, I guess to your question is, what business does the school have stepping in at that point? So where is the line of parents choosing what they want for their kids, and then the school district saying, well, that's not what we think it should be, so we're stepping in. I get that. I understand that, but I don't think that's what this is about.
And so, look, I think this is a really important conversation because I share exactly the same outcome goal that I think everybody else does. And as Paul says, it's aspirational. You know, we want everybody in our school community to be kind, dignified, and respectful, right? We really do. And I get that when kids leave here, I don't expect it to be a free-for-all. You know, that we do want these sorts of aspirational behaviors all the time. I just want to make sure, and the value of this conversation is that we're talking about the fact that there are boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? That there aren't school consequences for things that happen outside of our purview, right? That we are trying to intervene and stop and de-escalate a situation so it doesn't get to the police if it doesn't have to get to the police, right? That, you know, the value of this conversation is it helps make clear that we know there are boundaries, right? We can be aspirational and still recognize that we have boundaries. Is that fair?
It is.
So,
With that, I can be supportive.
okay, great.
I want to be clear, we're not discouraging someone from going to the police, right? We're not. No.
Don't call us.
This conversation go a lot of different ways.
It could be a high school situation at 11:15 on a Friday night. Ken doesn't answer his cell phone, so the police department shows up. That's what happened.
Okay, let us get back to this. So on environment, if we end it with wherever we interact with each other, what would your suggestion be to pull the well-being culture piece in?
Well, then we don't need to.
That's where I would go. That's why I brought it up, is to say, I think the two have a connection that you really need to have the whole conversation for.
We could shorten both of them.
Are you comfortable with that, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not gonna die on a sword.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna edit. So we are going to keep the statement at NAPLS is committed to fostering an environment of kindness, dignity, and respect. And for environment, it will be wherever we interact with each other. Okay, those were the big two pieces, so we're almost there. So the other edits, when Michael and I talked about this, he brought up, hey, when you start the definitions with we are, we will, they stop being definitions. So what he and I talked about was just taking out the we are, we will, and like for committed, just starting with dedicated to policies and actions that reinforce these values. That makes it much more of a definition. And I think it actually strengthens it. So you guys follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Agreement?
Yep.
Okay.
Just want to work through each one of them quickly. I don't think it would take. So committed would be.
Okay, so committed would be dedicated to policies and actions that reinforce these values. Fostering would be encourage and promote the development and ownership of behaviors to produce positive outcomes consistent with these values. Environment, wherever we interact with each other. Kindness, act in ways that honor individual uniqueness and trust in the goodwill and good intentions of one another. Dignity is the same, accepting and supporting the self-worth of others, and respect, be considerate of the feelings, viewpoints, rights, or traditions of others. Make sense?
Yep, yeah, works for me. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, just grammatically, could we?
Right, make sure.
Yeah.
English teacher, double check it.
Well, and even like, just consistency. So I know dedicated's dedicated, but it would be encouraging, acting, accepting, considering. Sorry, did you get that?
Sure. Did you get that, editor?
I'm working on it.
Okay, that is pretty much the work that I wanted to get done
Well,
with
we
you
should,
guys.
we should go through the rest of the fostering, right?
And discussion.
Oh,
Sorry.
It's missing part of it too, to produce positive outcomes.
Yeah. Right. So, in fostering, there were a couple ads. Encourage and promote the development and ownership of behaviors to produce positive outcomes consistent with these values. So the ads were ownership and produce positive outcomes. And that kind of is echoing the ERO language.
I like ownership because that's right there with ERO. What was the other word?
It's to produce positive outcomes.
So now we have to define what positive is. And, I think that's, yeah, I think it's adding that isn't necessary.
Okay.
My
Does
view.
everyone agree?
I would, because now you got to, a positive outcome that has to be defined.
Right.
Okay,
Is
so
winning, if I win the argument, is that a positive outcome?
For you?
For me. But,
I get it.
okay.
What do you guys think? Kill it?
Keep ownership.
Keep ownership.
Okay. Is there anything else?
No, can we touch on kindness? Because I think that's such a, we've talked about kindness, but
Go ahead, Phil.
there's, the language in this definition is really powerful to me, because especially again, over the last couple of years and just the direction the country's been going with assuming ill motive when somebody disagrees. It's like, well, you must be an idiot. You must hate me. You must want a free for all. You must want, there are these assumptions that when there's a disagreement, that there's ill intent. And especially with kids, they're formulating intent. Oftentimes they don't have good impulse control. And to assume that every disagreement is the product of something bad instead of just misunderstanding is a big part of the problem. And so the way that we are defining kindness here really starts with this notion of grace. Just assume good intent. Assume that the person you're talking with, assume the person who's disagreeing with you isn't a bad person. Assume they're a good person and that there's something maybe we'll learn from them. So I just think there's incredible power in honor the individual uniqueness and trust in the goodwill and good intentions of one another. Starting there, I just think is so powerful. So I want to make sure we covered it.
Yep.
I agree 100%. I actually was going to call that out. I'm glad you did, because you were much more eloquent than I would have been.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's all about assuming positive intent. I forget who was up here earlier tonight talking about, we've just lost the ability to agree to disagree. And even if it's not an argument and it's just more about, just assume positive intent. This person's different from you. They hang around people you don't hang around with. Whatever it is, just maybe open up your mind a little bit, try to understand them and get to know them, and just assume the best in people.
Yeah, there's a school of psychology, therapy known as cognitive behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral modification, and it's the way you see the world, the lens through which you view things, the lens through which you view people colors everything that all of your perceptions. And so if we can just change the way we think or look at another person, if we change that view from, they're weird to, oh, they're unique, they're different, instead of being a negative, it's something like, oh, well, maybe this could be an interesting conversation. And so it's really powerful stuff. Oh yeah, right. That was a great commercial. Oh, now we're talking about beer. Great.
So can I go back to the last respect? So I think we had the word considering, and I just want to make sure we're good on this. Because to consider is to think carefully before acting. To be considerate is to not want to cause hurt or inconvenience?
So the word was considerate. The word is considerate.
Right, so my question is, what do we want that to be? Do we want to be being considerate of, or do we want to consider? Because I think they both are good. It's just, they are different.
They are the same root.
They are. I
Okay,
just-
let's go to the dictionary. See if they're really different.
While Phil's doing that, I'll just mention kindness, dignity, and respect. Again, from this board, from values, from our administration, all the way through our students, our teachers. I mean, it's simple. I mean, I can't wait for the KDR t-shirts instead of the E plus R equals O. And then I think that if you really lay these definitions out for our kids, we should, because it is I hate to say it's a bit of a culture shift from the way that the world has been operating in many respects, and the way the political climate operates in many respects. And I think that that's had an impact on our kids. So I think we need to work within our 20 square feet to work on our KDR. And I think we'll be surprised how many of these interactions that create a negative campus culture can be quickly changed, or hopefully made not to be repeatable with a discussion of kindness, dignity, and respect as core culture or core value of our district. So I'm excited about the work.
And when you hear from some students who aren't experiencing kindness, dignity, and respect, to me, that's the whole point of why we need to make this crystal clear what our expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
So there's a couple different, as typical with, it depends on the dictionary you look at. So the definition of consider is think carefully about something, typically before making a decision. And consider it. Careful not to cause inconvenience or hurt to others. Now, these were just the first two definitions. I would, as someone who relishes the idea of argument, who likes to engage in argument and debate because I learned something whenever it happens. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. That's never a goal. But sometimes when you disagree, people are going to have their feelings hurt. And it's a question of what we do about it. And I think if we're always tiptoeing around and trying to, we should try not to hurt other people's feelings. But remember, taking offense is a choice. And so I'd be really, I want to foster an environment where people can have the debate, where they don't try to hurt somebody's feelings, but they consider.
Well, I think consider it. I think you're saying we're aspiring not to hurt people's feelings. And you're in your most civil debate, you might have someone take offense, but you're going to attempt to be civil.
I'm not going to go out of my way to hurt their feelings. But if they take offense.
So which one are you advocating?
I know.
I'm advocating for keeping it at, I'm advocating
That's
for
what I
keeping it
thought.
as it is.
I'm gonna have to considering too, because again, it's about giving thought to something before acting.
Okay.
So you're being thoughtful about how other people feel, what they view, what their rights are, what their traditions are. You may not agree,
But you're thinking about it.
but you're going to think before you act.
That's where I go. So keep it.
Well, that I would, but we're only two people.
I understand.
I'm with that.
That was fun.
One is a being something, and the other is
Doing something.
doing something. And the others are also doing something. So it's consistent. I would hope that we would be considering what we're considering context of considering our actions.
I agree with you.
Michael, anything else that you're thinking when you're looking at this? Okay.
I have to sleep on it.
Yeah, I think we all do. So why don't we just end it there? We're all gonna kind of, so we've made these edits. We'll get it back out to everybody, and you guys can consider it again. And then we'll come back at our next meeting and hopefully finalize it and approve it. That sound good?
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for bearing with us through that. Let's see, where are we? Discussion items. Are there any board liaison reports? No. Okay. On to superintendent items. May I have a motion and a second to approve superintendent's items A through C, please? Mr. Bush and Mr. McClellan. Superintendent Torres.
President Kalinowski, members of the Board of Education, letter A for personnel, standard employee action items related to contractual terms and conditions of employment, spring coaches, where we think are now fully staffed for spring with the approvals this evening. Changes in teacher rates of pay related to degree changes. So teachers do have the right at the beginning of each school year and then again in February to submit documentation to Mrs. Lofton for review related to degree changes based upon their continuation of higher education credit. So those appear on this month's agenda. I'm going to call your attention to one other item in personnel, and it's the resignation of Dr. Shirley Hamilton as the Director of Secondary Education at the end of her current contract effective July 31st, 2022. Dr. Hamilton is completing her 6th year in the school district as the Director of Secondary Education. I want to thank her for her service to our school district and everything that she's done within secondary education over the course of the last 6 years as she enters the next chapter of her personal and professional life. So congratulations to Dr. Hamilton. Letter B this evening for general business includes the much awaited, and registration actually opens tomorrow, approval of Eagle Summer Day Camp. It's the one thing I'm going to call your attention to. So it's different, that only shows up once a year. So we are approving the tuition rates associated to Eagle Summer Day Camp, the before and after school camp care for summer of 2022. Registration actually opens to families currently enrolled in Eagle's Nest tomorrow. So that will happen based upon your official approval this evening. Everything is set in the website to open for registration purposes. And Mrs. Steves and Mr. Emery's phone calls hopefully will cease the opening of registration. And then letter C for donations. As always, we're very grateful for the philanthropic support of members of our community, and especially the recognition associated to the teacher grants that were provided by the intermediate school PTO, and then the primary school Carnival of the Animals. So Mr. Emery was successful in seeking the Ohio Arts Council grant to help offset costs associated with the Carnival of the Animals, which will be coming up later this next month. Today's last day of February. I think it's March, and it's not. So in the month of March. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Love that Carnival of the Animals.
It's a tradition.
Anybody have questions? Okay. Ms. Gerhart, please call the roll.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. McClellan,
Yes.
Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Vice President Newhoff.
Yes.
President Kalinowski.
Yes, and the motion carries. That brings us to adjournment for this evening. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Darrow and Mr. Newmoff. Ms. Gerhart, please call the roll. Mr. Darrow,
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff,
Yes.
Mr. Bush,
Yes.
Mr. McClellan,
Yes.
President Kalinowski.
yes. The motion carries, and our next meeting is on March 21st at this location. Thank you all so much. Oh, at 5 o'clock, yes, early, because these are marathon meetings. Thank you all.